Okay, I believe we are live, or it looks like we're live. So this is the Artcasters number, I believe, 32. Usually it's with Kevin Cross, who is not here because he's on his way to California temporarily. And if you've been watching, you probably know what that's all about. Hold on. There we go. All right. So, but filling in for Kevin, we've got Gazbot as a guest host.
Hello! Excellent. Thanks for having me.
And, of course, Jeff Lafferty.
Hey, everybody.
And so the one thing, it seems like every time Kevin is out and we have a guest host, we always talk about Kickstarter, or at least we have once before, and we're going to do it again. So, and this is kind of my suggestion because since the last one, Jeff has run a Kickstarter. And he hadn't on the last time we covered the thing, so covered Kickstarter. So I want to kind of pick his brain about that. Gaz just ran a successful Kickstarter, and I'm going to launch one I think next month. Woo-hoo! So I wanted to get some feedback, and I think it was really, Gaz, it was really your Kickstarter that kind of made me think that I could do it. Because for one, I think we have kind of a similar size audience.
I would think that yours is larger, but I'll take the compliment.
Well, I mean, it's all relative. I'm guessing compared to, like, say, somebody like Jake Parker who has like 7,000 followers or whatever, but 700,000. But yeah, one of the things that I've noticed, like just doing research on Kickstarter online and everything. There's a lot of information out there, but I think it is geared more towards those bigger players that have bigger audiences. So I've always kind of shied away from it because I just didn't think that, I had the audience. One, because one of the statistics I hear is that, you're lucky if like 10% of your audience is going to contribute. And to me, that's just that it's probably not going to fund. But I don't know. It seems like you were kind of surprised by the performance of your Kickstarter and how it went.
I was shocked at how well it went. I mean, in a good way, but yeah.
Yeah, and not that I expect mine to go the same way. You never know what's going to happen. But so it just kind of put it in a whole new light for me. So I'm really interested to talk to you as somebody who is just now starting to kind of build an audience on YouTube like me, or just on social media in general, and gaining a footing and doing that. And I think another thing, because we're both veterans of the 100 Days of Making Comics Challenge, I think I think there's a community there, and there's I think people
absolutely
have been watching our videos and anxiously waiting for these books to come out. And unfortunately, I had to drop off briefly while I ran into some issues and stuff. But the book is now done and everything. And like the other books, I was just planning on, funding the printing, funding it myself. But we as artists, comic book artists especially, we put a lot of time into these books. And I think a lot of people appreciate that. And I think there's a lot of people that are willing to contribute, one, to get the book because they're getting something that they've been waiting for, and two, to kind of show their support for kind of all the hard work that we've done. So I figured, what the heck, I should give it a shot and try this Kickstarter thing. So.
I mean, obviously, I agree, and I think it's a great idea. But the funny thing is, a couple months ago, I was saying kind of what you were saying, to yourself, like, should I do this? And two things that really pushed me to do it. One, just like you saw my success, I saw Ox's success, who you've had on the show before, and kind of like what you were saying, like, oh, he's not some big famous guy, and he managed to do it several times,
Right.
So that inspired me that it could be done. But it was also a thing of, the actual printing, I could scrape together the money, I could put it on my credit card, I could make it happen. And I felt like, am I entitled to asking for help if I can afford to do it myself? And I kind of struggled with that a bit. And in the end, I decided, partially based on his success, but what you're saying too is that there are people that want to support the arts, as hard as that is to believe sometimes. And another friend of mine, Mike Dawson, who's a little bit higher in the food chain of comics, he's still an indie guy, but he's had books published by publishers. And he was saying to do the individual issues and not wait for the trade, which is what I was going to do.
Yeah, me too.
Because because it serves as a pre-order for those issues, because I was going to make them and sell them like you do, kind of just on the down low. And he's like, well, this is like anybody who's interested, it creates a window of, hey, there's a month. If you're thinking about it doing it, if it's just sort of could ever, oh, I'm going to have it up for a year or 2 years, anybody could get it whenever, they'll put it off forever. But if there's a time limit, they're more likely to contribute and buy the issue. And so financially it made sense to me that way, and the community you're talking about, it made sense that people actually wanted to back it as people who enjoy art and are willing to do that. But another thing for my own sanity, as anybody who's working on a big project, whether it's a comic or not getting feedback for a long time could be disheartening and kind of maddening.
Right.
And so, I mean, it took me about a year to do the first issue. Now, hopefully it won't take me a year to do the next issue, but if, let's say I got the whole thing done in 2 years, which would be pretty quick for me, that means am I going to not get any feedback financially, emotionally, artistic critique, good, bad, or indifferent for 2 years while I toil away at this?
Right.
Or I could put out an issue, and I'll tell you, I mean, my energy levels were very low at the end of this issue. Like, I wasn't going to quit because, I'm just not, I will finish it even if I hate my life,
Right.
But I was like, oh, why did I do this to myself and this and that? As soon as I put out the Kickstarter and I got the support, and like the money is great, but it was more that so many people were interested and excited, and I got a few test issues in my hands, and I'm like, I can go to shows and sell these. Even though the project isn't done, it was this huge milestone, and I felt like a reward. And it didn't make me want to quit. It refilled my tanks and got me excited to start working on issue 2 in a way that I wouldn't have thought possible as I was, going through the drudgery of getting everything print ready for the first issue and doing all the non-art stuff that was kind of killing my enthusiasm. That beyond any financial reward this might reap, putting out the individual issue or issues in your case, I think is going to give you a huge morale boost.
Yeah, and I was thinking about that too, because I mean, I love the book, but it's like comics are just so weird because I can do a print in a day, all right?
Yeah.
Maybe a little more, but a print in a day, and it's going to make me more money than my comic book probably ever will. So
Yeah.
And the comic books just take so long, So it's kind of that thing, but it's like that labor of love. I mean, you do it because you love it, but still, it's like, oh, I got this next issue. I got one issue done. Now I got to start the next one, and then you remember all the trials and tribulations you went through in the last one, and how long it takes. And it's like, but I think that I think if the Kickstarter, if I run it and is successful and people are interested, I think that is going to spark a fire to get the next one just started like right away.
I think it absolutely will. It absolutely will. Because I mean, you're a much more positive guy than I am, about art stuff. You know what I mean? So if it could excite me, it could excite you for sure.
Right. and it's kind of contagious too, because you mentioned it too, but you also sense it, and just your excitement when you found out how well this was going, beyond your expectations and everything, and you could see that oh, this thing works, It makes others excited too, and I'm excited for you to be excited and you to start on the next issue and everything, and so yeah, it's really awesome. So.
Well, Jeff, when you were doing yours, did you I kind of had low expectations where I was hoping I could cover my print costs, and I figured if it took me a month to get just what I barely needed, I'd be happy. And so when I did better than that, I was over the moon. Like, what was your expectations going in? Because you have a little bit of a different sort of project.
I mean, I don't want to seem like crass or whatever, but I asked for what I thought I could get, I think.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I hoped it'd fun. You never know for sure. But I did kind of just, I kind of looked at what I thought I could get. Because I actually had run a Kickstarter before that didn't fund, years ago now.
Okay.
And that was kind of disheartening and all that. It was actually on the stop motion stuff, so it was kind of a drag. But this time around, I was like, I'm not going to ask for where I felt like I couldn't get it. So I just kind of thought, but then when you start it, you still are kind of like, I don't know if it'll work or whatever. You know what I mean? So I think it might have been a little different for you, because I noticed, you asked it, when you did yours, you asked for, I can't remember, $300 or something. It was really low. I noticed.
$350 was my original ask. Yeah.
Yeah, you blew past that in the first. When I went over there the first time, you were already past it.
Yeah, my first day, and again, not to sound crass, but my first day, I more than got what I asked for, which was shocking. But I did aim low because I don't have a huge fan base online, or not one that I'm aware of anyway. I've only got like 250 subscribers on YouTube, and I've got like 500 followers on Instagram and things like. So I have I have people that look at my stuff, but not huge numbers. And so my idea was not to factor in anything but the actual nuts and bolts costs of printing and shipping. And I was afraid to ask for more than that. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So you weren't like thinking, because I almost was thinking a little bit like it's kind of like pre-sales in a way,
Well, that is how I was thinking of it. Yeah, but if I if I sold, I forget the math I did at the time, but I think it was like I needed, after the fees, because PayPal takes fees and Kickstarter takes fees and everything. After that, and I had watched other people like Ox talk about how sometimes payments don't go through, and so you get your lump sum, but it's missing some that you expected. So I figured out the math on to print 100 copies with an ad running through Kablam and buying the shipping materials and shipping them to anywhere in the United States. I would need X amount of money, which was less than the $350. And then I took that, added the percentages that they would take, added in a margin for error, so I wouldn't make any money profit at all. It would just be enough to print 100 comics, send them to people, and then I'd have some extras left to sell at shows. And that was like my whole goal. So everything over that arguably is profit, although as anyone who followed my Kickstarter knows, I put it into taking the ad out of there and making pins for people and making, so most of that money went back into the product and went back into help giving people more, and whatever I have left over is I have in a separate bank account so that when I do a Kickstarter for issue 2, if I don't have such a good response, because some of the people that responded were like my aunt who contributed $50, and I can't count on my aunt every time to do that. This was, so the people like that drop off hopefully will be replaced by fans who read the first issue and are more interested in the art than who I am as a person. But if that doesn't happen, I've got a little bit of extra in the bank to help me so the project doesn't stall completely.
Yeah, that's cool, and I think that's like kind of more what like Kickstarter, like the original impetus for it. It's like somebody like bootstrapping a project. They, and that's what you did, and it worked, and that's really cool. I think that's awesome.
Well, you did it too, brother.
Yeah, I guess so.
So, Gaz, how much preparation did you do going into it?
A lot.
A lot. Okay,
a lot.
Because that's kind of, and I mean, I'm kind of doing the same thing, but my biggest concern is because another thing I've heard is that like running a Kickstarter is like a full-time job, and the problem is like right now I have a full-time job, and this next month that I'm going to be running the Kickstarter, I also have to prep for the big convention that I do every year. So that's what kind of worries me.
That's a legitimate concern, and Jeff may disagree, but I think calling it a full-time job is overstating it a lot. It is like having, as a freelancer, it's like having another freelance job is how I would put it.
Right, okay.
Because you do have to make updates, you do have to change graphics, if you're running it correctly anyway, in my opinion. But it didn't consume all of my time. It would be the equivalent if I had another client job that was due at the end of the month and I had to give updates throughout the time. Okay. That being said, I tried to get as much done ahead of time as possible. I tried to make sure I didn't have any super crazy big projects going at the same time. I did it after the big convention season, so I didn't have that. I wanted to make sure I did it like it ended before my family came to visit, things like that. I wanted to minimize other things going on, but it's not like all I did every day was working on the Kickstarter. I was working on other things at the same time, and it was fine.
Okay. And so what about you, Jeff? I mean, how much preparation did you do going into it and maintaining it?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I did a fair amount of prep, probably not as much as I should have, really. I looked at other Kickstarters and with all the graphics and stuff, and I didn't really do that because I kind of thought that I'd never get around to it if I just kind of like delved into that. So I sort of just pulled the button, pushed the button like sooner than later. But I know, like one thing like with Gaz and your Kickstarter funded like very quickly, and like mine funded like in a couple days too, And so I think that like on my first one, the one that didn't fund, I think like that did become like a full-time job. It was like I was like just scrambling the whole time because I was just like looking for people to subscribe and like or pledge and make it because it wasn't going.
Were you making sorry to interrupt, but I just wanted to ask: were you making like personal like were you emailing people personally and messaging people personally at some point, or?
I did that. I did that on both of them. Because
Oh.
I kind of have a mailing list, and people who buy stuff off eBay, so I like reached out to all those people.
Well, but
Um,
did you send a blast to all of them, or did you email each one individually? Like, hey Tom, thanks for supporting me in the past, but
I actually did it individually because I didn't want it to come
Oh,
off
wow.
like this is just a big, you know what I mean? I kind of like I did like about 15 a day. Like I tried to stay. I didn't want like Google to suddenly go like you're spamming people. Stop it. You know what I
Right.
mean? So I kind of like just spread it out over the whole campaign and just kind of like sent like a few. But
I
like
think Ox said he did that too, actually.
yeah. Um, and I wanted it to be like more personal. I didn't want to just be like I know you don't you bought a print from me like 3 years ago. I know you don't know who I am, but Um, but like like back to my point was like on the first one when it wasn't funding, it was just like anything I could think of. I was just bugging everybody and anybody. You know what I mean?
Right.
And I don't know, but like in this one I think like because it did fund it, I kind of took my foot off the pedal a little bit and just started coasting. Because it's like I got
Right.
the money. I didn't. This is what I needed, so I was
Well,
like okay.
if I'm being honest, I wouldn't say I coasted,
Yeah.
but because I definitely did updates. I did video and I did picture, and
Mhm.
anybody through Kickstarter, and also once a week in the beginning and then a little bit more frequently towards the end, I would post up on Instagram like, hey, 2 weeks left and we have a new stretch goal, that kind of stuff. So I certainly was involved that way, but I didn't do any individual. I never sent an email or a private
Mhm.
message to anybody. And I'm not judging that you did. I'm just saying like it.
Yeah.
I guess maybe because I funded, I didn't feel the need to. But like I don't know. I felt. I guess I felt like since I had already funded and I was overfunded, I felt bad just giving updates once a
Yeah.
week. Like oh man, are people sick of hearing about this? So maybe that's
Yeah.
my own issue.
Yeah. No, I know what you mean. You just like don't want to bug people, especially after they give. You're like, well, they already gave. I don't want to bother them more and more
Yeah,
stuff.
I wish there was a way to like so that people who contributed would not see my posts for the next month.
Yeah. Well, you were
So,
definitely going with the videos. I was like liking watching the videos.
oh,
They were pretty
thanks.
fun, especially the one like right after it funded, where you were just like all shocked out of your
Yeah,
shorts. That
it
you
was,
know
it was, and that
that
was
was really
genuine.
neat.
Thanks. It was a little embarrassing to do, and I was almost gonna not do it, but then I was like, no, because
Yeah.
people deserve to see that that I appreciate this. Both the people that were contributing, but also people like well, Scott Digger, but people like Scott or like myself or like you or that hadn't done one yet. I wanted them to see
Yeah.
do it. It's worth it. Like even if you get a modest goal like what I was asking for, it's still a great feeling to have that support. When it's not just your friends and your mom, telling you, hey, you're good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It definitely makes you feel that way. Like wow, it's actually people actually give a shit about what
Yeah.
I'm doing.
And
So
it makes it feel more real too. Like I've been working on this comic for a year, and even when it was done, it didn't feel real until I launched that Kickstarter. And then I'm like, oh man, no matter what else happens, I could die tomorrow, and there's going to be this record that I did a comic called The Hooray for, like on here forever. Even if it fails,
Yeah.
like
yeah.
everyone will know that's a thing, and it suddenly got super real for me.
Yeah.
What was funny about watching your updates is that because the way you do your updates, where you film them and then you compile them,
Right.
so I'm watching it and I already knew that you funded. So you're watching this is like you're like, I can't believe this is happening. I can't believe this is happening. And then as you go on, well, and then you know what's coming because I'm a few
Right.
years ahead of you, and then
Yeah.
you just see that whole process, which is pretty awesome.
Yeah, I struggled with that a little bit too because it'd be better, I guess, ideally if it was like revealed as you watch the video that hey, it went well, but I didn't want to not update Facebook and everything else in the meantime, and I figured I'll just do it, and if it's behind, it's behind.
So,
Yeah.
so what would you say then to like the statistics that say only like 10% of your audience is going to contribute? Because I assume you would agree if that was the case, then you wouldn't have funded properly. Or well, you had a pretty modest goal, but funded in the way that you did.
I would have guessed that I would not based on that, and I've heard that too that count on 10% of the fan base, but I guess. maybe I have a fan base that I'm unaware of, that aren't vocal, that aren't commenting on videos, that aren't sharing, that like follow me, but I'm unaware of. The other thing is a lot of people, did more than just buy the comic. A lot of people contributed at the higher rates where they get a sketch or they get the print. And so in that case, that one person who may represent 10% or less of my overall, followers contributed more than 10%. Is, you know what I mean? Like it was like a weighted system, a prorated system of contribution that, that was shocked more than anything else. I was shocked by some of the people that contributed $50 or, a couple people contributed $100, which wasn't even what do you call it, category. My highest category is $50, and some people were like $100 just because, and it like it's very humbling, and it's a weird thing to say because I'm very appreciative, but it's almost awkward and embarrassing, and again, maybe it's my own weird like I'm no good, but it's like if I'm asking for 50 at the most and someone gives me 100, I really appreciate that, but at the same time, I get like I don't know how to thank someone for that, you know what I mean? Like thanks for liking me more than I even thought you should.
Well, and I hear, and the one thing I noticed looking at your campaign, I hear that one thing that you should do is put sort of a very lofty goal, even if it's, pledge amount, even if no one ever does it, because you never know. Somebody could just really, really love kaiju and dig what you're doing and just has money and really wants to support you. And if you have like say a $200 tier, then they might do that. But say if you had a $500 tier, and not that that would happen, but you just never know.
That's true. And I agree with you. And one of the things I'll do when I run my next one is have that sort of thing. And actually, Q, my wife, had recommended having a goal, a tier, I should say, that I've seen other people do, which is something like, if you live near me, I'll have lunch with you, or we could do a Google Hangout, and I'll look at your art, or something like that. But honestly, I didn't want to do it. Like, I was terrified. I'd say, $500, we'll hang out and talk about art online. And I'm like, but what if somebody does that? I'd be so like, hanging out with you guys is fine. We're just talking and we're all artists and whatever. But somebody who's expecting a $500 experience out of it, I'd be like, I wouldn't know what to do. I'd be so terrified. You ever watch Curb Your Enthusiasm?
Yeah.
And Larry David goes to some lunch with someone. That's how I would feel. Like, what am I supposed to do that's worth, so... I mean, which is weird because I'm a pretty outgoing dude, as you can tell, but it's different when somebody, wants worth out of what I'm saying. I start questioning everything I say. I'm like, I'm talking a bunch of crap. This isn't worth anything.
So other than just posting on social media and everything, did you do any other kind of advertising? Did you reach out to like any blogs or anything like that, or?
Jeff, you want to answer this one first?
Sure. Sorry. It's funny, like, listening to you guys, I guess I'm just used to being under, like, Kevin, and it's almost like I'm listening to a podcast. Like, when you guys go to me, I'm like, wow. But anyway, let's see. Did I reach out to any blogs? I didn't really do that. I actually didn't do any, like, that kind of promotion, other than just... put it out on Facebook and that kind of thing. And then, I had people share it. I had people talk about it in their videos, which was cool.
Yeah.
I didn't really reach out. Like, when I did the one for the stop motion, I did actually contact a lot of, like, the stop motion sites and stuff. And a lot of those guys did pick up and talk about my stuff and spread it around. But it just wasn't enough. But, I think it works if you've got that kind of,
juice.
It seems like that was like a different time, though. It almost like the blogs and forums and everything has kind of gone away, and it's like they're all replaced by like Facebook and Facebook groups now.
Yeah.
I would agree with that. Yeah. I also didn't do any blogs or anything. I mostly did my own social media, and the Facebook groups specifically, like he was saying, I didn't just spam all of them, but I'm in various art groups with you guys. I'm sure you saw me mention a few times. But even more than that, and I don't know how well it worked, but I'm in like fans of Godzilla and Tokusatsu fans and things like that. So any group I was in that isn't necessarily art related but is related to the type of material my comic was, I would share it there. And I would put some kind of disclaimer like, hey guys, I know this is mostly about robot toys, but I have this book coming out that I think is the kind of thing you guys would dig, hopefully, and take a look for But I only did it like once or twice to each group in the whole month because I didn't want to spam something that wasn't really what the group was about. And other than that, it was just my own social media stuff. And when I was lucky enough for another YouTuber or somebody to mention it, but I never asked anybody to. It was just if they were kind enough to do that.
Did you just a question? Like when you kind of had the end result and you could see everybody that pledged.
Right.
Did you have like anyone? Because I actually recognized everybody that pledged online. I don't think I really had anybody come in from the outside and just be like, hey, What about you?
Well, in the beginning, it was all people I knew who they were. By the end, I would break it down like this. I would say 50% of the people were friends and family in real life, or friends online, like somebody like Scott, who I've talked to a lot over the years, who I haven't met in real life, but like I know him well enough from online. That was 50%. Friends, family, and online friends that I know pretty well. 25% were people who maybe their name vaguely rang a bell, like they commented on one video I did a year ago, or if I followed the chain, like I don't know them, but I could see that Jan knows them, and they must have found me through him because I know him, and then 25%, and this was the surprising and oddly more gratifying percent, were people I could not figure out who they were or how they knew me. And some of them, because of the analytics on Kickstarter, there's like percentages where I think they just looked up comics and found my comic and said, oh, that looks okay, or they looked up, monsters or kaiju or something, and found it that way, or maybe, found me elsewhere on the internet. But there was about 25% of contributors that I had no idea who they were, and I couldn't figure out how they'd know me. But those contributors typically got, just a digital comic, just a pin, something small, kind of like, well, let me check this out and see who this is and see if I like it. So even though it represented 25% of the people, it certainly didn't represent 25% of the funding.
Yeah,
that's good to hear. And I'm wondering if that might be just a comics thing, because I think comics are more of a discoverable thing. Well, art books might be too. I assume you posted in. The other thing is
I didn't.
Comics are. There's not as many projects on Kickstarter for comics as there are like just art. So where did you post yours at, Jeff? Like
I think I just was like like art, like the first tier. I didn't even really follow it down because I was afraid that I would get too niche, you know what I mean, and then people would go into art and not see it. So I think I just went like art, and that was pretty much it. Which I was a little worried about.
I don't know if you watch. Have you watched Will Terry's video, his latest one?
I do watch him, but I haven't seen his last one. No.
So, I mean, his is an art book, but he put it in comics, which I was kind of like, well, that's, to me, I'm kind of like, well, that's kind of really, a little bit, sort of. I mean, if everyone started doing that, and he said, he put it in there because there weren't as many people in the comics, I mean,
but that's one of those tricks that it's not going to work over and over again. You know what I mean? That's one of those things. Like he figured out a way to do it, but that if everybody starts doing it, it's not going to work.
And I mean, he did kind of state that a lot of the characters in his book were from comics. So I mean, I can kind of see it there, but it's still sort of a gray area. But
and I think a gray area too. Like, will it work really? Too. I mean, is it like, was it better? You know what I mean? Would it work better?
I'm sure it definitely worked better for him. But he's got.
Well, I mean, you really don't know though. I mean, it might have actually worked better in art rather than comics. It's kind of like just guess.
It's hard though with someone like him that has such a large fan base that it's probably going to succeed regardless. And you're saying like, well, how would it have worked better? Which way he did it? It would almost be better if a less famous person did it and tried it each way and saw which way it did better, because it would be more about how they advertised it versus just their name recognition.
And again, that's why I kind of wanted to have this discussion, because I'm not going to have that. I don't have that kind of audience that Jake Parker or Will Terry has. So, and obviously, and I've heard statistics that, what was it? I think in that same video, I think Will Terry said that he was quoting Jake Parker saying that if you want to kind of figure out if you think your comic book project will fund, open up a Facebook, like a fan page for your property, and if it gets 1,000 likes, then then you're good. But if not, but I mean, okay, I've had a Facebook
I don't have
fan
1,000
page.
likes on my
Yeah,
Facebook.
I've had a Facebook. I'm like maybe at like 950 right now, but that's over I don't know how many years, and it's not just Young and the Dead. It's just everything gradually. So I mean, if that was the case, then I don't think a lot of people would be able to do Kickstarter. So that's kind of why. I mean, Jake Parker has excellent videos on Kickstarter, and I really kind of I've listened to them a couple times each just to kind of because there's a lot of knowledge there, but I don't think we should be too intimidated by that because you can't now with print on demand you can set a more modest goal.
Yes.
And then, but because who knows, it may fund at that big level, and if that's the case, like I know once you started going, you set up I think a $5,000 stretch goal, and if that would have funded, then you could have done
offset printing.
Offset printing,
Correct.
right?
Right,
So,
and that was something that maybe I would have put in the beginning had I realized how well it was going to go. And I didn't make that, and that's fine because that wasn't part of my thing. But
right.
I at some point before I put that up, I thought I didn't make it public, but privately I'm like, wow, I'm already at like $1,000. Maybe I can do offset printing, and I looked into one that was recommended to me, and the cost it just made no sense. It was like, oh, I would have to spend every cent I got from my Kickstarter just to print it, and all I'd get is the comic, and I'd end up having more than I could possibly sell in a year, and it just the only way to make it worth it is if I did get like $5,000. So that's why I put that in there, and that was sort of like, I don't think I need this, but if the demand is there, sure, I'll do it.
Right, and I think that's kind of good, and probably something that maybe even prepare for that just in the event that it happened, because it sounded like, I know you said you did a lot of prep work up front, but that was something I think that probably caught you off guard.
It did. It absolutely did. The success, the rapid success caught me off guard, and because I had a few stretch goals in mind, and I prepared a lot. And knowing what I know now, I'm going to prepare even more next time.
Yeah.
Because I was like, okay, well, I'm going to set it low. It might go over. I had a few stretch goals in mind, which were basically the first 2 or 3 that I ended up putting up there. But it wasn't like I had in mind, oh, okay, well, I'll do stickers or I'll do an extra button or whatever. But I didn't crunch the numbers to see what made sense and come up with a design, and because I figured, oh, well, I have a month, and once it funded in the first day, I was like, I can't wait a week to add stretch goals, so I have to hurry and get on it. And so I sort of was up all night one night making up stretch goals that would make sense financially. And then once the stretch goals started being met, I'm like, I better quick come up with a sticker design. So as much as I prepared, I did not prepare for rapid success.
Yeah. Now, because you started off so strong in the beginning, and there's always that sort of Golden Gate Bridge graph of the way pretty much every single Kickstarter is, where you're usually, typically, almost always, you're high in the front and then the end, and then you've got that slump. Mm-hmm. So did you ever get to that point where oh, this is crazy? If it keeps rolling like this, or I assume you knew kind of going into it that it was gonna slow down for a while.
I did know it was going to slow down, but I clearly didn't predict very well how well it was going to go from the beginning, so I didn't trust myself to predict it.
Right.
Also, I will say that is generally accurate of how it went with me, but I feel like the first couple days were crazy, and it slowed down, but there were only a few days when I got no contributors at all. There were towards the middle, there were days when it was 5 or 10. It wasn't the big ones from the beginning, but out of all 30 days, maybe there was only 5 days when I got nothing, which I liked because it was trickling in a little bit each day as opposed to all at once in the middle or whatever. And then honestly, I had a bigger bump towards the middle than I did at the end. I had a little bit of bump at the end, but that was mostly people who I said before were seems to me found me as a comic or found me as a kaiju comic and just spent 5 or 10 to get the comic itself. But I got a bit of a bump in the middle, not as big as the beginning, but the second biggest bump. And I think it was because I was doing an update. I did a new video, and I talked about what goals were met. And I, said, hey, look, if you get any physical rewards, now you're getting a free sticker and a free button. All of a sudden, by spending the same money, you were getting more. And I think that encouraged a lot of people to jump on, whether because of the value or because they were, everybody loves a winner, or just because it's a new video and it brought it back to their attention. I don't know. But certainly around the middle, I put up a new, update video, and it generated more pledges, and every time I put up an update of any significance, it generated more. It might have been 1, it might have been 10, but I don't think there was ever a time I said, here's an update of any sort, and it didn't get me something, which, again, goes back to where it was tough because it made me want to be like, oh, I should be updating every single day. But I didn't want to, be that guy that is annoying with his Kickstarter. So
Right.
it's a fine line. But at the same time, like the people that were contributing, I'd be doing it for 3 weeks, and somebody who I'm personal friends with would be like, you're doing a Kickstarter? And it's like, how do you not know? Like, so I don't know. It's tough.
Yeah, I think people can bear with you for a month while you kind of do that. And also, I mean, I think if you're updating, if you're constantly just saying, I got a Kickstarter, contribute. I mean,
right.
But if you're showing new images if you're posting every day, oh, here's a new image, here's something else I'm doing with the Kickstarter, something that they haven't seen before. True. And I don't think anyone's going to have a problem with that because you're seeing something new. It's not just like contribute to my Kickstarter. It's like, oh, here's something cool that I'm working on for the Kickstarter, and then so I think that's hopefully the way I'm going to kind of approach it.
I agree. I think there's a lot of truth in what you said there. I think the only problem is with execution because I would occasionally just put up an image of one of my characters saying, hey, 2 weeks left or whatever, and I'd throw that all over the various social media, and it would not take me that long. But when I would do a video or something where I did outline the new, artwork or whatever the new plan was, or we hit a milestone, anything like that, those are better updates, and I think you're right that people have more patience for them, but those take more significant time. And that if I was doing that every couple of days, then it would start to become a full-time job.
Right.
And maybe that's what some people do, and maybe they have much better result than I did, But I think I had 4 substantive updates where I put more than a few minutes work into just throwing something up there.
Yeah, and I do agree with that. If you just go about your business and keep doing your cool stuff and just mention it, it's a lot better than just, firing out Kickstarter all the time.
Right. I did, yeah. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I did do daily videos while my Kickstarter was going, or I tried to. I got pretty close to it.
Right.
And I just tried not to constantly talk about it, but, it was going on, so you do talk about it. And like you said, Gaz, it's like every time I put a video up, I got a couple more people. So, people I think just, they don't watch every video. They, come along whenever, and then they'd see what's going on, and they'd go and donate.
And that's good that you have, you're putting up daily or almost daily videos. My style is more like every week or two, so it would be very conspicuous if suddenly every day I have a short video where I mention, but I did mention it in my Kickstarters, obviously. I mean, my updates, obviously, I mentioned the Kickstarter. But what I did try to do, not as much as I probably should have, was I would do a little sketch, hey, here's a warm-up sketch of a monster or whatever, and then I'd be like, by the way, my Kickstarter's still going, So the main point was, here's a new drawing, and then, by the way, the Kickstarter.
Yeah.
But even that, you have to be okay with shameless self-promotion, and I'm kind of okay with it.
So Gaz, just to your point, I mean, if you would have put out a video every day, and I think I would speak for a lot of people, I would definitely watch it because, I mean, you're very entertaining with all your videos and your blogging and stuff like that, and I look forward to your videos when they come out. So me personally, I wouldn't have a problem with you doing that. I'd be like, oh, cool, another video from Gazbot. Maybe they'd pile up if I got busy and I wouldn't be able to see them all at the time.
Well, that's very kind of you to say, and maybe that's true of other people. I don't know, but I guess, if I happen to start doing daily videos, that's one thing, but I guess it. And again, I'm not criticizing other people who do this. I'm not making any judgments, but just in my own stupid art head, I guess I would know that I'm now doing videos every day just to promote my Kickstarter, whether or not that's what I said, and even I would feel that way, and kind of like the thing of meeting somebody on a Google Hangout for $500, I would feel this weird pressure to prove that it's not just about the Kickstarter and come up with some awesome stuff, and that's constraints I'm putting on myself, so I'm just crazy.
So a couple of things I wanted to go back to. So we were talking about that kind of dip in the Kickstarter that they all have. Now Jeff, your Kickstarter you ran for less than 30 days. So I'm wondering, that to me that sounds, in some cases that seems like it might be a good idea. I don't know. I mean, would you would you
I
consider
did it
doing
that
that,
way
Gaz?
because it was like so stressful last time. I was like, I can't go through a whole month of
Yeah.
this again. So.
But if you have that dip, but then again, Gaz said every single day, I think he got at least one backer. So
Almost every single day, yeah.
yeah, so maybe the 30 days is the way to go. But the other thing that I've got to look at the calendar and see how it works out. But I know for both of you guys, you're solely freelance. So whereas I've got full-time job, so I don't want my campaign to end while I'm at work. So
you need to quit your job, Scott. First.
Actually, the job's going pretty good, so I'm not gonna. Yeah.
No, you gotta like what's it called get your back up against the wall. So you gotta quit your job, put all your eggs in Kickstarter basket.
I do a lot of caricatures at like kids parties and stuff, and like often the parents will be like, "Oh, little Jilly, she likes to draw. Tell her how do you become an artist?" And I'll be like, "Well, fail at other things. Like I failed math and history and gym, and this is true. And so I knew that I was no good at anything else. I said, don't study business, don't study, because you're going to do that. Make it so that you have no choice but to make art for a living, and then you have a chance of succeeding." And I got to tell you, the parents love that advice. They're so happy they have it.
Yeah.
So the other thing that I wanted to go back to, we touched on this, but I had asked you guys if you how much prep work you did, and you said you did a lot. But like, explain to me before starting the campaign, what kind of all did you do? Now, obviously, you created the artwork and everything, which I'm going to be doing. But what other things, like what other kind of like research did you do? What other planning did you do going into it?
Well, yeah, the first thing that I think it bears repeating is that I had the comic, the artwork, the writing, everything. I won't even say done. It was like 90% done.
Right.
And in retrospect, I want it to be next time it's gonna be 100% done.
Yeah, and mine's 100. So
yeah, so that only because for those that don't know, my book is black and white. All the art was done, everything was done, except some of the pages I was doing grayscale, similar to what Scott's doing, and some of them needed a little bit more grayscale, which isn't a big deal. But in retrospect, I'm going to wait until I have that done too, because if something had happened, which it didn't, but if I got hit with a crazy big deadline, or if I had a car accident, or if anything had happened, I suddenly could have been a delay in getting my shipping out, which I don't want. Right. So it ended up being okay. It's all done and everything. Okay, so one was getting as much done on the actual physical project as possible. Two was watching videos of people I know or respect who have done Kickstarters and things that they talked about, and taking what I like and ignoring what I don't, like most things. And I also went on Kickstarter, and I've backed a few projects on Kickstarter. That's another thing. It's like, don't put out a Kickstarter if you've never backed a single thing in your life. Like, you want to have that experience of being someone who backs and see how you're treated and see what kind of updates you get for good or bad. But also, I definitely have backed projects or not backed projects, and I've looked at them and be like, oh, they've never backed anything. And it's like, it's unfair, but it does seem like, well, if you're not backing people, why should I back you? And it's, you know what I mean?
I've backed a number of projects, so that's good
that's
too.
fine. And that's not a hard and fast rule, but I know that again, I was just trying to cut down on things, and I had luckily already backed some things. But but also, again, in a selfish way, by backing things, you see how people interact, how many updates they give, if it's annoying or if it's good or whatever. And I also looked at their reward tiers and what they were looking for and what they offered in reward tiers to give me ideas of things to offer. I think Jeff said this about imagery, like the basic font they give you. Most of the better Kickstarters seem to have an image they create with the headings, like, oh, rewards and challenges or whatever, but they do it in their own font, their own color, and then they import that as a picture, because that's not an option in Kickstarter, which I thought it was, but it's something you have to custom do. So I did all that ahead of time rather than trying to figure it out after I launched it. I crunched numbers money-wise. I crunched numbers time-wise. I figured, it's going to be 2 weeks till I get payment, and then I have to send things off to get printed, and then what if there's a delay? And so I tried to not say, oh, I'll have it next week. I tried to give myself more time and more money than I would need, hopefully. And for example, also, like, some of my rewards were sketch rewards. They all take a month longer than every other reward. Now, I might not need that, but I wanted to give myself that leeway. And towards the end, I added more sketch rewards, which they were like a smaller, like a head sketch for a little bit less money. And I gave myself another month on top of that, because one of my number one things was I don't want to make people wait. I don't want to disappoint anybody. You know,
Right.
I want it to be successful and make money and do everything good for me, but more important is making everybody that supported me happy. And I didn't want to fail on any level with that. And so a lot of my preparation was doing everything I could to minimize the risks of disappointing people that supported me.
That's really cool. I've already messed up that when the first get it printed and stuff. And I think that's smart, you know, like going through all the shipping costs and everything. I did that. I ran through it like over and over because I didn't want to screw myself.
Yeah.
Just get it all figured out before you jump into it. And then plus, you know, it takes a while. You know, it takes a few days to get just the Amazon payments and all that set up.
Yeah, and that was something I didn't know, but I learned from watching other people's videos talking about it that, you know, factor in time for that, and I'm glad I did.
How long did that take?
I still haven't got my payment. Have you got? Well, I
No,
assume.
how long did it take to set the Amazon payments up?
Oh, like a day?
Okay.
It took me like 3 or 4 days because it's like they wanted to do it to the bank, and I mean maybe I just did it backwards or something, but it took a few days longer than I thought it was going to. So.
But that all comes before you launch the Kickstarter anyway. Like,
yeah.
Right. You're not going to be able to launch it until you have that set up. So if you do it wrong, the only one you're hurting is yourself.
Yeah, but it's just something to think about, especially if you got like, you know, a start date or something that you want to go for.
Yeah. Actually, that's some good advice.
Like, I think it's 20 days after it ends, or a minimum of 20 days. Maybe that's what it is.
Yeah. And one thing I did, which isn't something everybody's always in a position to do, but like, even though I haven't gotten paid yet, I already made the stickers. I'm putting in the button order tomorrow. You know, I'm gonna make prints later this week, and I'm putting out my own money, but I'm not putting out thousands of dollars. I'm putting out, you know, maybe a couple $100s to get sort of things started that I can get started. And so that's one less thing I have to worry about later. And again, I'm sort of loaning money to myself, knowing that that money is coming in, so I can afford to do it. And not everyone can afford to front that for themselves. But even with the comic itself, I'm not going to print all those up hoping the money comes in, because if something goes wrong, I could really screw myself. But because I'm going with Kablam, I ordered one copy immediately, which I've already received and looked at, and it had a couple little minor things I wanted to correct, which I've corrected and sent back, and I'm getting another test. So I haven't got my money from Kickstarter yet. So as of now, like my requirements, what I owe to my backers, I don't owe them having put in the print order yet for the comics. But I want to be able to, when that money shows up, be able to put that order in immediately. And the best way to do that, in my opinion, was to get these test comics that I paid a couple bucks each and get everything 100% ready to go before the money came in.
Yeah, that's good. I mean, I did the offset printing route, and you know, it's like I did the same thing. As soon as the money showed up, I immediately sent the payment to the printer and the files. But then it just takes forever for them to get back, and then the changes take like forever, and then I don't want to print without seeing the book first. So it's like the first one I got just wasn't what I wanted. So it's like the whole thing had to go back, and I want another proof. I want to make sure the book's going to look good before it's done. But I mean, that's one plus, I guess, going through like a print-on-demand place. I definitely thought about print-on-demand.
Well, with the kind of art you're doing, though, I think it's going to make more of a difference. I'm doing black and white and gray digital comic art. Yours has a lot more subtlety of color and texture that the printing process can make a big difference. Where I don't think it's going to matter that I didn't get it offset print, really. You know what I mean? But I also think
I've seen like print-on-demand books that I can't tell that are print-on-demand, though.
Well, like, okay, so you did the wrong thing then.
I'm wondering if have you seen print-on-demand books that were more like painted, like what you do, Jeff? Or because comic books, I mean, I think you get a little leeway with comics, I think.
I guess I really haven't seen any like that are painted art, but I've definitely seen a lot of comic books at like cons and stuff that people have given me, and a lot of times I can't tell. So, I mean, I think Kablam's like a great printer myself. I think
I've been happy with my test copies. So. Like the test copies I've gotten, I've been happy with. The issues weren't with the printing. It was like, oh, this page was a little off center, or oh, I forgot to change that. Like little things that I didn't notice. One thing I will say though is, and I've probably mentioned this in my videos, but just for everybody that isn't familiar. My first test print was before I even had all the art 100% finalized. I just wanted to see the paper, just make sure this wasn't going to be garbage because I'd never done it, you know. So I sent away for 2 issues, figuring I'd sample them, and I was going to bring them to a show just to show people, hey, you know, you could tell there's a page that doesn't have the gray in it, but this is what it's going to be. And I didn't get it for close to a month, which surprised me because that should be like, you know, your full order, and it said if you get a sample, you'll get it pretty quick. And what I realized, I believe, I mean, nobody said this to me, but having now ordered another one where I only ordered 1, and I got it in a few days, I think they consider a sample or a test 1 issue. Anything more than that is an order. So I did a test with 2 issues, and I think that's why it took so long. So if Scott or whoever else is thinking about getting a test, get 1. It'll be a lot quicker.
So that's what I was going to ask, because I was almost going to risk, because I need to probably get some stuff for at least like print the first 2 issues again. So I'll probably do a small test run with the 3rd one for a show. But I'm thinking the show's coming up in a month, and I've had it take that long to get something from Kablam. It seemed like recently it doesn't take as long, but you never know if it's con season or whatever. Because, you know, I was almost going to risk it and just hope it came out right and print right.
That seems like a really bad idea.
Yeah.
I mean,
so
I understand.
You think if I just sent 1 out, it wouldn't?
I mean, I cannot promise you that, but that was my experience.
Okay.
I ordered 2, and it took 3 or 4 weeks. I ordered 1, and it took like 4 days. And I've since corrected the page I needed to correct, sent it back in, and it once again, it didn't give me a guarantee date, but it said something along the lines of, this order qualifies for our fastest possible shipping. And it wasn't like I paid extra or anything. It's just because it was, you know, 1 issue, I believe. You know,
okay. Yeah. So maybe I will do that, at least for the 3rd one, because I have to make just I'm going to make a minor change to the first 2 issues. And you know, I know most of them came out fine before, and I've never really had much of an issue with it coming back bad, but you never know. So
yeah, and what are you gonna? If it comes out bad, you can't blame them. I mean, you can if it's like a printing error, but if it's something you messed up, then you just waste all that money.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, I've always wondered about Kablam, because I've done a sketchbook through them. That's how I knew that they're pretty good. Oh, and I actually did like a comic a while ago. I forgot about that. But like that was a long time ago when they first started, so I think they've changed a lot. But with the sketchbook thing,
I remember seeing some of their old ones. The blacks were all weird and stuff, but it wasn't like that on mine.
Yeah. But when I did that sketchbook thing, I would sell. I bought like some, so I got like a box of them, and then I just sell them out of my house, and ship them to people. But then when I got down low, one time, when I kind of completely ran out, and then I had some orders come in, so I was like, oh crap, So what I did was I just went to Kablam and I just ordered them comics. So I just like paid like the bigger price just to send that to them, so they wouldn't have to wait. And I was like, always like, why come they take like 3 weeks to send me books, and then it's like they can just send them a book like tomorrow. You know what I mean?
They get more money when you do it that way, don't they?
I guess that's it.
Yeah, I mean, speaking of sketchbooks, I just read something on their site, and I didn't pay too close attention to it because it didn't apply to me personally, but it might apply to you if you decide to do it. That they might not do sketchbooks anymore if it includes, quote unquote licensed work. So like I guess they used to, you could do whatever and have Spider-Man and Han Solo and whatever, and they would just print it. But somebody must have said something legally, because there was something in there about how they might not be doing that anymore.
That's wild.
Through Kablam?
Through Kablam, yeah. I mean, again, if it's something that applies to you, you guys or a viewer or whatever, like do your own research, because it didn't really apply to me personally, but they definitely had what looked to me something that was like a disclaimer saying that they would not print licensed sketchbooks anymore. Yeah,
it's weird, some companies, because I had some like parody T-shirt designs that I did on I forgot which ones, and one of them got flagged and I had to remove it. And it was clearly a parody, but obviously I wasn't going to bother fighting it, because they don't. Right. I'm not going to go up against whoever owned that copy.
That is kind of crummy though, because I mean obviously there's a lot of gray area with this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But my understanding from everybody I've talked to that's smarter than me and is more informed than me about the law is that while it's a bit of a gray area in general, things that are parody or significantly transformative should not be an issue. So if it's an obvious parody and it happens to include, a character owned by another company, you should still be protected, like Bad Magazine or somebody like that.
Yeah.
So, but you're right. I understand why you didn't fight it, but it's just crummy that you are in the legal right, but because you don't have the resources to prove it,
Yeah.
Yeah, but I'd have that same design up on another T-shirt company, and it wasn't a problem. So,
right.
Who knows? So
I wonder who's going to be printing all these sketchbooks at the cons now. If Kablam ain't going to be doing it though.
I mean, you could go to get it. I guess you could go to like a local printer or like. I mean, Kablam's just like the most well-known one, but there's plenty of online printers. It's probably because they're most well-known that they got in trouble. Because Marvel or Disney or whoever isn't looking at, Mama Jimmo's, in Alabama that only people in Alabama know. They're looking at Kablam because that's who everybody knows.
Yeah.
And
Sorry,
Mama Jimmo's does have great printing, by the way.
Mama Jimmo's. They have great ribs too, I hear.
Ribs and
offset
direct printing. Yeah.
Not offset, yeah, whatever. They're not real. Guys, I'll admit it, they're not real. You heard it here, folks.
So what was there anything that what kind of things, now that you've done your Kickstarter, would you approach differently for like the next issue? Gaz.
Okay, yes,
Or,
it's an issue.
Or Jeff too after Gaz, I guess.
Hey, we have an assigned order of speaking. Well, like I said, the number one thing right off the top is that while I was mostly done, I will make sure to be 100% done, just because it made me nervous that something could throw me off track. The other thing is, I think I would have some extra art ready. Like one of my stretch goals was to do art for the back cover, which was great, but I didn't have that art ready. And I was like, yay, I did it. And I'm like, oh man, now I got to quickly create some art for the back cover, which ended up being okay. But again, if a job had come up, it could have messed me up. And there's also like a weird amount of pressure where, a pinup like that should be fun and like, just take as long as you want, make it as good as you can. Whereas I'm like, well, I got a few days to knock this out real quick, and I'm not unhappy with what I came up with, but I'm sure had I done it ahead of time with the idea that maybe I can use this, then it would have come out better. And similarly with like, and if I didn't get a back cover, I could have made it a print or something like that. So a lot of it comes down to having more artwork done than I even need, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And
go ahead.
I was going to say that's kind of what I'm doing right now. I'm doing these zombie sketches to include as,
that's smart
part
too.
of the Kickstarter.
I did the thing which I don't yet know if I regret because I haven't had to start delivering yet because I haven't been paid, but my sketches were you could ask for whatever you want. Doesn't even have to be a character from my book. I did give the disclaimer that I didn't want to have to do likenesses because I've had that in the past where I'm expecting someone to say, Wonder Woman, and they're like, do my Aunt Sally or my kid or my cat or, and I don't want to have to worry about that extra.
As long as, I'm the same way because like you, I do a lot of, anytime I do a portrait, it looks like a caricature.
Right.
So as long as they don't mind that it looked like a caricature. But I might make a limited amount of, like, custom sketches, but I just want to have I want to have stock of a bunch of sketches already done because I've heard of so many people that, for one, they don't put a cap on it.
Oh yeah, I was really happy I put a cap on it.
Yeah, so you just don't want to have to do all these sketches because that's going to back up the time for printing, and it just takes so long.
Right.
And I don't know, just doing custom sketches.
It shouldn't back up the time for printing though, because when I get the money for the printing, I'm going to put it in. Oh, for shipping, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes more sense. Yeah, and like I said, I might end up regretting it, but I do sketches at cons, and I think I'll be okay. Talk to me again in a month, and maybe I'll have a different story.
Yeah.
But you doing some ahead of time is smart because a lot of people, it seemed, wanted original art from me, and I didn't want to give too much of it out for that reason. But if I had a reward tier that was like, here's a bunch of robot sketches I did, here's a bunch of kaiju sketches I did, here's a bunch of whatever things that are vaguely on theme but were already done, that like what you're doing would make sense. But also, if I were you, and you might not want to do this, but if you're going to offer custom things, like somebody's face, you have the advantage of being able to say your face as a zombie, which
Right.
gives you more leeway with the likeness and making somebody pretty. Because like even if you get the likeness right, sometimes that's part of why I don't like doing real people in that stuff. Because you think that looks like me? My nose isn't that. Like so it's like it's an extra layer of something somebody might be unhappy with. Whereas if someone's a zombie, they're supposed to look gross, so you kind of have a little bit more freedom.
That's pretty much exactly what I was going to do if I do original sketches, and I'm sure I will. But I'll probably limit it to because if you're getting something custom, I think even if the artwork is like the same size and maybe takes the same amount of time, mm-hmm. I think people would expect that if they're getting something custom or by request that it might be at a higher tier.
Right. Yeah, and it should be because. An item, that's how it is at cons. I'm sure you see this all the time. Like, if somebody has a sketch of Spider-Man on their table, right. They might sell it for $20, whatever. But then if you request a Spider-Man, it's going to be 30, 40, 50. It's always more because it's on demand, and it's exactly what the person wants, and there's that pressure on the artist, whether they want to admit it or not. When you're drawing without anyone looking at it, you have the luxury of it might not come out right and you could chuck it. But if you're sitting there trying to get that thing right for the person that's going to be wanting it in 10 minutes, that's worth more money because, there's the pressure there too.
Yeah.
So I was going to also...
Sorry.
Jeff agrees.
I was going to ask you, Gaz... Oh, I'm sorry. Jeff, did you want to chime in on that?
What you would do differently?
I don't know. I did do sketches, but that's like my business. So I was like, they're gonna want original art. So, and something you could charge more for too. So.
But the original question was, what would you do differently on your next Kickstarter?
Oh right.
We got sidetracked on it, but.
Yeah, man, that's a hard one.
Well, because a couple times I was talking to you and you said, "Yeah, I should have done that," or just because I think you said that kind of once you funded, you were kind of like, "Well, I did it," and then you kind of backed off a little bit. Which I think if you would have promoted more, you could have you could have did even better. So, but you and I are both different people and we approach things differently. So just your personality, I can kind of see where you're coming from.
It's funny. This whole Kickstarter thing. It's almost a little bit like conventions with me, where it's like it just stresses me out like so much that it's like I almost want to say like if I do something different, it's like it would be just to not do it. You know what I mean?
I found it a lot less stressful than conventions, to be honest.
Really?
Yeah, I certainly got stressed during it, but because anything I owe people, like I could do kind of what I was just saying on my own time, as opposed to a convention. It's like an immediacy of like I'm going to succeed or fail in the next 5 minutes, and I only get one chance at it.
Yeah, absolutely. I get that.
But obviously, like Scott said, you're a different person, and you like that version of it better, I guess. The immediacy.
Well, no, you mean as far as the cons, or just?
Well, as far as the thing I don't like about cons, and I enjoy cons, okay, but the thing I don't like is the immediacy of if I get a sketch request, I could mess it up right there, and there's not a lot I could do about it. If somebody wants a print and I run out, there's nothing I could do about it. If somebody wants to talk to me about something and I say a dumb thing, I could offend them, So there's a lot of immediate ways to fail. Whereas with the Kickstarter, I could take my time and compose a nice email thanking them. I could redraw their sketch 50 times if I want to. There's a safety net there because it's not so immediate.
Yeah, I could see that, but and I used to draw at cons, but I don't do that anymore. So, but I do kind of remember like the pressure of like doing the commissions at cons and stuff. I think like with me and cons, it's more like the prep, and I think that's what I kind of meant by the Kickstarter. It's like it's such a big deal, you know what I mean? It's like it's this big, huge, gigantic thing that you have to like put together, and it's like a big party, and you're going to invite everybody, and you have to be on while it's happening, and then you have to, then you have like this big thing, and everybody's hanging on your, every word, waiting for like their presents, you know what I mean? And that's like just like super stressful because and especially like this whole situation of going to an offset printer, because I've never done that before. Everything else I've printed has always been print on demand, and it's just like really freaking me out because you just don't want it to go wrong in any way, and people be like disappointed, like you were saying. And I don't know. It's I don't know. That's not really like something I would do differently on the next Kickstarter, but
it is pretty gutsy to do something like offset printing the very first time when you have like a definite deliverable date and you're beholden to people. Like, so in some ways, I'm really glad I didn't meet that goal, because I don't envy you having to navigate like that new thing with the eyes of everybody on you while you're doing it.
Yeah.
One thing I'll say about
that's what I would do differently. I wouldn't do offset printing. Alright.
One other big plus. No, I cut you off, but I'm just going to keep cutting you off. One other thing I want to say, because I keep forgetting, though, is kind of a plus column of why to do a Kickstarter in general for those that are on the fence or whatever, is and this might not be true for everyone. Like, Jeff, this might not be as big a thing for you, but for me at least, the exposure, as much as that's kind of a dirty word, and they're like, you'll do it for the exposure, but since it's self-promotion, I think it's fine to say. The Kickstarter definitely got eyes on my project and on me as an artist that wouldn't have otherwise. Not just people that contributed and backed it, but I show up in search engines for Kickstarter now. And if people look me up, they'll say, "Oh, he had a successful Kickstarter. Look how much people like his work." And so it had a net positive beyond helping me and my morale and my artist ego, beyond helping me financially fund this project. It increased my internet visibility in a very noticeable and positive way. And so, even if I failed, it would still increase my visibility. And my hope is that now the very few people that know me are like, "Oh, that's the Gazbot guy. He has a YouTube channel." Or if they see me at shows, "Oh, he does some Godzilla prints or whatever." My small thrill would be if people started going, "Oh, that's the guy that does the Horror A4." You know what I mean? If I became known as the guy that did the Horror A4, that would be a huge win. And I saw the Kickstarter visibility, regardless of success or failure or how well it did, as a step towards establishing myself as being identified with that personal project, as opposed to other things I've done.
And that's cool because another thing I've been hearing recently is that that kind of used to be the case where you would get discovered on Kickstarter, but not so much anymore. Mm-hmm. But I don't know, maybe,
maybe I'm low enough level that my expectations weren't that high. You know what I mean?
That's kind of what I'm thinking. But it sounds like there were a decent amount of people that just discovered you. And I've been just also probably just like you in researching Kickstarter, looking at other comic book projects and kind of watching how they do their videos and how they set up their tiers and their graphics and everything like that, and just kind of seeing how other people go about it. And I've found some really cool, Kickstarters that I don't think I've backed any other than yet, but there were actually one, there was one that I backed. So I mean, I could see that definitely happening because I mean, people do go through. It seems like people go through at least the comics area and maybe are looking to discover new things. So
yeah, I definitely backed at least one comic when I was doing research, and then once I started getting all my funding and I was getting all successful, I backed I think 3 others, as sort of pass it on, oh, I'm getting money, okay, you guys too, come on,
That's funny. I actually did that same thing. Once I got the money, I was feeling all rich. I'm like, yeah, I'll help this guy out. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you were talking about your feelings on cons and things, Gaz, and I know. So you had a convention in the middle of your Kickstarter. So yes. Did that? And I know you printed up some flyers and stuff. Did that help at all?
I have no way of knowing for sure, but I don't think so.
Okay.
I mean, it ended up being one of the best cons I ever did, coincidentally, but not having anything to do with the Kickstarter. But I just made a lot of sales, and it was But I printed up the cards. I gave them away. I gave a lot away, hundreds at the con. Everybody that bought something, I gave them to them. And again, it helps that a lot of my prints are, Japanese tokusatsu, Ultraman, Godzilla, things that are, the inspiration for the comic I do. So it's in the same ballpark. So I'd say, oh, I like Godzilla. Here's my kaiju comic I'm doing. So that everybody that bought something got one. Anybody that stopped by and showed an interest in the subject matter, even if they didn't buy anything, I'd give them one. And then I also put a few just on the table for people to grab. I put some in my local comic shop. I mean, I'd like to think maybe one or two of those turned into a backer or someone who follows me on social media. I would say I'm more likely that people follow me on social media than actually back me on Kickstarter.
Yeah.
And again, I did pick up a few, more backers around that time, which arguably could have been from the show, but I don't think so. If I had to guess, I'd say it didn't do nearly as much as I thought it would or hoped it would. I don't know if I would do it again. You know what? I think I think I would do it again because the next time I'm at a show with a Kickstarter, I'll have at least one issue of the book out, and I think that might make a difference of going, oh yeah, here's issue 1 and issue 2. I'm going to be printing. I think people are more likely to get on board to somebody who's watching a show and they're like, we want season 2, but everybody write NBC and tell them you want season 2. There's that aspect to it where I think it might have been a little too abstract to the average con-goer that this book isn't out yet, but if you go here and a real comic fan would get it, but there's a lot of people that are just like, hey, I heard the Norman Reedus is here from Walking Dead. They don't understand the idea of
Right.
pre-ordering a book that doesn't exist from someone they never heard of.
Yeah. Well, one thing that once you get books out, one thing that I've been told is that, and I'm anxious to see now that I go to the convention and I've got 3 books, because somebody once told me that you got 1 book, that's one thing. You got 2 books, that's another. But if you got 3, they can kind of see, oh, this is a thing, this is a series, and this guy is committed, and he's putting these books out. So I'm wondering if that'll help me. Now, the other issue I have with when I go to cons is because I've got so many different things going on. So it's not, there's comics, but then I've got all this other stuff, and sometimes it's just too much for people to comprehend. So there's been a lot of times where people are looking around at my stuff, and then I'll see they had say a guy has a Goonies shirt on or something. I'll say, oh, you like Goonies? And I tell them about my book and everything, and they didn't even see the book before, and they're like, oh, well, you do comics too. So I think now if I have them displayed a little more, I'm anxious to see if that kind of makes a difference. But I think that's one thing you'll find. I think when you put out more books and have them kind of side by side, because there are some people out there, and I admire this because. They're out there just doing their own, create their own books, and they've got a lot of them. And I think, and I notice those more than the person that just has 1 book. Like if they've got a whole bunch of them, like this guy really is doing some cool stuff.
It's automatic respect. Like I may or may not like what you're doing, but you got 10 issues out. All right, you're the real deal. It might be garbage to me, but you give a crap about what you're doing, and you're going to keep doing it. And hats off to you.
Yeah.
The other thing, going back to what you were saying about having all the other things on your display, you're in kind of a weird situation. Like we have a lot of similarities, but that's one way we're very significantly different. Is you have a lot more, your whole Serkland brand is very distinct from your comic book stuff. Whereas, I'm Gazbot, and Gazbot does prints and comics, and that's that's my whole thing. That's all it is. There isn't a secondary brand, and all of my, or not all, but a lot of my prints and things I'm doing to just get money at the table is at least tangentially related to the type of comic it is. But even that being said, when I start going out with the comic, I won't stop having prints altogether because just financially it's unrealistic. But I am going to cut out a big chunk of my table that would previously be for just prints and things like that to be, hey, look, it's the Horror A4, and have a stand of that, and I'm going to have the standee, assuming the show has room for it, and I'm going to be pushing that. And
I was just going to say, that was an awesome stretch goal.
I'm so happy I made that. I can't wait to get that thing. It's going to be awesome. But that gives you an idea of what I'm talking about, where my display of non-comic book horror-related stuff is going to get smaller intentionally. Whereas, but again, that's mostly licensed work that I don't necessarily own the rights to, so it makes sense. But your stuff that is not your comic is your stuff, so I don't know how you're going to strike a balance. Did you ever think maybe certain shows you'll go to push the book more, and other shows you'll push the Serkworks brand more, or? I
don't know. See, and that's the thing, and maybe it's not coming across, but because anytime I do my intro, I say I do robots, aliens, zombies, and other imminent threats to humanity, and that's how I throw in the zombies thing. Now the book is kind of a different style. It's more pen and ink like traditional comic books, whereas my other stuff is more digital looking. But the idea to me, you know, and I struggled this because there was a really cool project that I was working on that just did not fit into the Serkland thing, so I kind of put it aside because it just didn't go at all, even though I loved it and I still kind of want to do it. But you know, I'm trying to fit the idea that zombies fit into this Serkworks world because, you know, this is a laboratory where we're messing around with like zombie viruses and all kinds of different things. So that's kind of how it fits in. But if you notice the way I do, because I already established, like in my previous 100 days of comics, the blog, before I kind of introduced the whole underground layer set and everything. So now I've tried to shoehorn it in where, I don't know if you've seen my recent videos where I've got this thing called the paralleloscope, which
yes, I thought that was hilarious. I gotta say, I loved it, and I enjoyed your old videos. I enjoy your new videos, but I don't. Yeah, if that was like one of the first videos I watched, I might not know what's going on, to be honest. But it was fun.
So when I do now, and this is, you know, as much as I'd like to keep the continuity through everything, but sometimes I just got to break form because reasons.
Right.
But so like with the video, when I shoot the video for the Kickstarter, I'm going to show me working. I'm going to film it from the lab because I think it's kind of a cool and interesting background.
I agree. Very awesome.
But I'll show me working on the comic book in the lab. I'm not going to do that whole thing because that's just, especially in that short amount of time, and I want to keep it short. And then what I'll also do is I'll probably do another video that kind of goes more in depth in what everything is, but I want to keep it fairly short for the main video, like definitely under 3 minutes, if not around 2.
Well, let me ask you this, because with the paralleloscope, is that what it's called?
Yeah.
That was a good way to unify the sort of two styles of videos you do and stuff. But I guess the issue would be when you try to unify them, like you have the sort of the character of the Scott Serkland of Serkworks, who is the mad scientist,
right?
And then you have the artist Scott Serkland, who arguably is still a character because you're public facing, but it's closer to the real you.
Right.
And a lot of the things that I and other people enjoy, I'm sure, are when you talk about your life and, oh, I was trying to get this printed and it didn't work, and oh, look at this line came out funny, but hey, I'm happy I used this new marker, like real life stuff that the character of the Serkworks doctor couldn't do.
Right.
You couldn't have them as so. I don't see any problem with having two different versions of yourself on two different shows. I don't know that you need to unify them.
Yeah, it's kind of my way of breaking the fourth wall without actually breaking it, it's going to take me a while to figure out how everything works. And like you said, for somebody just stepping into this thing, it's probably too much. But I'm hoping that, as we go, followers, because I was watching some videos from he's a film critic. He's the
Linkara?
No, online Nostalgia critic, right? So he's got that whole nostalgia critic persona, but then he's got his regular self, which for me it's kind of hard to differentiate which is which. But I kind of get what he's going for, because I notice like whenever he does the nostalgia critic, he's got the tie and he's got the hat, and when he's not, he's so kind of like that. But so I think this paralleloscope thing, which it could evolve into other things like, just a way for me to show videos on there or anything outside of that world. It's kind of my, kind of the silver bullet as far as I don't want to be trapped in this persona where I can't do other things. But I would like to do more vlogging and things like that. So I can tap into like, if I go back to doing like some outdoor stuff or whatever, I can do it that way. So that's kind of the way I'm doing it. And I've played with so many different ideas, and one of the ideas that I was going for was that I was actually trapped in this lab by that I was cloned, and an evil clone that runs the Serkworks. And because the kind of thing is like me, I mean, obviously, my demeanor, I don't come across as the crazy mad scientist guy. So I'm trying to, but again, the idea that I was cloned and I have evil clone, and the evil clone is running Serkworks and he got me in prison there creating all these things. That's just way too much. So now just kind of maybe I'm this sort of benevolent mad scientist guy.
Well,
but
I always assumed
the world, but yeah, so
yeah, I always assumed you were mad, but not evil. Well, for two reasons. One, because by your own admission, you sort of have a lot of things that skew younger and like for schools and things like that. So having like an evil, like truly evil scientist be that sort of icon for the product line, it I just assumed you can't be that bad. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
you can't be that bad of a guy.
Well, I guess I can kind of compare it to like a Beekman's World, where he's kind of a mad scientist, but he's like a good guy, you know?
I didn't watch a ton of Beekman, but I know what you mean, and I guess that's what I thought of. Like, you're crazy in that you're like, I'll throw any chemicals together to see what happens, but your intent isn't to hurt anybody. You're not thinking about the consequences. Like, put the plutonium with the puppy. Oh, geez, look what we've done. You know, like, but you're not actually trying to conquer the world or anything.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of the route I'm going to now, because otherwise it's just too confusing. And I was going to do a whole intro, but then, you know, when you're doing YouTube and you get these long intros, I mean, it's just too much because people want to just jump in. So.
You know, it's funny you said that, because like I keep talking about when I get through this kind of phase I'm in, I was going to start a new, you know, for lack of a better term, show, even though it'll still just be me talking about art and stuff. And I've thought about like format things, and one of the things I thought of was having a pat intro. And I go back and forth on it because, like you said, some of these shows I'm like, ugh, but not Nostalgia Critic has an opening, and like there's another one called Linkara that has an opening, and I catch myself singing their theme song around the house. You know what I mean? And it's catchy. Like, so it's like, you know, if I could do it right, it could be awesome. But go ahead.
I was gonna say, have you ever seen Retro Blasting?
I haven't.
You've got to check out, if nothing else, for the theme song. It is so awesome. It's so 80s and so awesome.
Retro Blasting. Okay.
And you'd love it because it's all like it's toy reviews and 80s stuff.
Oh, I'll definitely check it out. Yeah.
Definitely check that out. So, sorry, I kind of interrupted you.
No, I'd made my point that regarding intros, I also have thought about adding one, but I'm not sure the benefit versus the detriment. How many people are going to think it's cool versus how many people are going to get annoyed and have to fast forward through it. And maybe the key is having it like the exact right length and having a catchy song.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like the short ones. The people who have like real long ones are usually like, come on.
Yeah, it's sometimes it's difficult if they're longer, but like the Retro Blasting one, it's a little long. It's almost like an intro to it, but it so much goes with the theme because it back in the 80s when they actually had theme songs for television shows.
Right.
It's all very retro 80s, but the song is just I mean, it's brilliant. You gotta check it out. So.
I'll definitely check it out.
And anyone else who loves like 80s toys and stuff like that, check out Retro Blasting. I mean, I love that channel. So.
Scott Serkland says Retro Blasting is A-OK.
And I forgot who recommended that to me, but whoever did, awesome, because I love that channel.
Man, I've been working on this for a really long time. I was just doing this
looking great.
Well, thanks, but I appreciate the compliment, but it's not for anything. It's not for my comic. It's not for a print. I'm like, I'm gonna draw a Transformer, which normally I've been doing for like 15-minute warm-ups, but I've been like noodling on it for like an hour, and it doesn't look that much better than the 15-minute ones. I'm talking so much. You guys are just so darn enjoyable. I can't concentrate.
It's weird because when you're doing this, because you get in kind of your thought, and sometimes. Depending on what I'm working on this, I'm just kind of inking, so I don't really have to think too much. But you know, if I'm like drawing something, it seems like nothing's happening. Like or it's just my mind is just going. I'm like, oh, I just did this thing, and I didn't even realize what I did.
When I've done these sort of things and I'm coloring, it worked great because it was like all of a sudden the page is done being colored. But yeah, when I'm trying to draw from nothing, it definitely like this should have been done an hour ago.
Yeah.
I'll lie when I post it. I'll be like, hey, this took me 20 minutes. I don't ever do that, but I suspect other people do that. I can't be
about how many sketches did you do for your Kickstarter? Did you finish those, like the original sketches and all that? Because you said you wish you would have done those in advance.
You're talking to me?
Yeah.
Well, I haven't done any yet because I haven't gotten my funds, and so until I get my funds, you know, I don't want to do sketches for people, and then it turns out they didn't pay or whatever. Okay. But I committed to so that's what I mean. Like I'm doing things that like printing up stickers. Even if you know like people drop out, I still need the stickers. You know what I mean? But anything that's specific to a certain person I into. But I committed to 20 9x12 pencil sketches of whatever they request, and I think 3 5x7 head sketches of whatever they request. So 23 total, but 3 that aren't as difficult. And I haven't started any yet.
What level was that at?
The 9x12 was at level 50, and level 50 you got a copy of the comic, a copy of the print, a copy of one of the pins, and then a sketch. So I think it made the sketch. I forget the math, but I think it was like an extra $20 or $25 for the sketch, is what it came out to.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Because
I wanted to talk to you
with-
about. Go ahead, Jeff.
I was just gonna say I ended up with 12 like original art pieces, like drawings, but I had mine at 150. So.
Well, but you
it
might have
would've
been delivering something a lot more high quality. Well, I don't want to say high quality, more labor intensive, let's say, than what I'm going to be delivering.
Well, that could be.
I'm thinking of these as con sketches. You know what I mean? Like I'm not going to
Okay.
do garbage, but I'm not. You know, what do you like? One person asked for like I didn't actually. This is something else that like I didn't send out the surveys to see what people want yet, but several people were like, "Hey, I want this. Can I get this?" And I'm like, "Yeah, but." Wait till I ask, because I'm going to forget who asked for what, 3 weeks, 4 weeks from now. But one person had asked for Gypsy Danger, which is the mech from Pacific Rim, which is great. And I love that movie. I love drawing mech. It's like, okay, that's perfect. That's exactly the kind of thing I hope people ask me for. But if I was doing like a real Gypsy Danger, that could take me hours and hours and hours. I'm going to do a quick sketch. I'm not going to do heavy shading. I'm not going to do every single little panel line. So, you know what I mean? I'm going to be realistic about what they paid for and what, time I'm going to put into it.
That makes sense.
So speaking of like rewards and things like that, I saw you did buttons, Gaz, and
yes,
and I already have a bunch of buttons, and I've got probably I think maybe 4 or 5 different zombie designs, and I was like, oh, that's perfect. I think I'll just put those in. But then in doing more research, I started learning about like media mail and. Are you familiar with Media Mail?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, maybe you should explain it for the audience, though.
Okay, so Media Mail is a service that the U.S. Post Office offers. It's probably like the slowest shipping they have, but with, meaning it might take a week or two, which I think when you're waiting for a Kickstarter, that's really not anything, but it just ships within, I was going to say continental United States. I don't think it ships to Hawaii or Alaska. It might. Sure. I don't remember exactly, but nationally, domestically. But the thing is, it has to be like things like technically educational, but books fall in that category. Even though you could argue whether my book is educational or not. If you're reading it, it's educational.
Right, but the law doesn't make artistic distinctions like that.
Right, exactly. So, but it includes. Pretty much everything has to be a paper product except for like things like CDs and again, if it's for educational purposes or whatever.
Yeah, I think you could get away with a computer CD, but not a music CD or some weird thing like that.
Yeah, but paper products work, and you can kind of like if you're for instance these sketches. I can throw them inside the book and kind of have it comes with the book. It's actually part of the book. Mm-hmm. So I can get away with shipping all that stuff, at least within the United States, and it's a lot cheaper. So I don't think the buttons would fall under that. So, but I also like your idea of stickers, so I might just take those designs that are on the buttons and make stickers out of them.
That's a good idea. I think you're right that buttons wouldn't fall under that. And I considered Media Mail, but my worry was that Media Mail is cheap, but it's not known for being especially gentle. And so I guess I figured if people are buying books, especially comics, there's a good percentage of them that are going to want it in mint condition,
Oh, yeah, definitely.
And so I worry that if I send it through Media Mail, it might get dinged up. And I worry that would disappoint people, and I wouldn't want to do it. So even though it would be cheaper, I just allowed for, I'm not going to send it Media Mail, so I can throw a button in, and it's not going to significantly increase the postage regardless.
Okay, and that's something I'm going to have to do because I don't have the new issue done, but I'm going to take pretty much everything that I have. For instance, if you were to order everything, so I'll put 3 of my books in. I'll put 3 like of the deluxe artist editions together. Obviously I'll double up on one of the other issues because I don't have the new ones yet. And then a print, whatever else I can put in there, take it down and kind of see what the difference is and kind of. But that is a good point. So maybe that'll sway me against Media Mail. But I don't know. I assume if I can make it somewhat protected a little more than. I don't know.
Just make it bomb-proof
too. So.
What, Jeff?
Just make it bomb-proof.
Yeah, yeah. But that adds weight to it too. So you never. I mean, that's what I got to figure out, I guess, and just see what the difference is. You know?
It's totally possible you could make it work. I just was sort of erring on the side of extreme caution.
Yeah, yeah. And that's not a bad thing at all. So.
Yeah, I mean, I rarely send anything media mail. I wonder how much of a difference it would be from just like, because if you get especially where you're putting a bunch of books in there, and you might actually price yourself out of first class too. You know, because there's like a weight limit on just first class.
Okay.
So I wonder what the difference will be. You know,
yeah.
And if you go up in like priority, you might be getting up there a little bit on shipping.
Yeah, I plan to kind of check that out beforehand just to see. You know, because that's the one thing a lot of people get screwed over on is they just don't figure the shipping costs and things like that. So I definitely want to make sure I allow for that. Oh, the other cool thing, and I don't know if I think Ox is in the chat. Maybe he can answer this question, but a lot of people are in the chat. I've been watching.
Oh, there's a ton of chat.
You haven't been paying attention. Yeah.
No.
Yeah, I'll have to. Sometimes we'll go back in the chat and we'll answer some of the questions, but sometimes we just get caught up in our own conversation. But anyway, so Ox did this thing, and I don't know if he did it so much intentionally, but what I took from it was because there's, you know, like with international orders, because the shipping always, I mean, you've got to, I mean, it just costs a lot. We're not Amazon. We can't afford, you know, we don't have that bulk thing. So, I mean, if you're going to order from us overseas, it's going to cost, we have to charge for it because we get railed on overseas shipping.
Right.
So, but one thing that I think you can do to offset that is do like what I want to do is like an exclusive print just for overseas, because sure, the shipping is going to cost a lot, but if I can throw in a print that I would normally sell for $10, it's not going to cost any more to throw that in there. Right. And then you're getting something at least that everyone else isn't, because you're having to pay that extra for shipping. And
yeah, I did see Ox did that, and I thought that was a really good idea.
Yeah, and I don't know if he kind of came up with that, or if he got it from somewhere else, or if that's like a thing that I just didn't realize. But that's just, to me, that's brilliant, because I just feel bad for people that have to pay that. But I mean, you know, and I have a lot of my followers, and I don't know that they'll contribute, because most of the people that follow me through Miscrits, the game that I used to work on, almost all of those people are in other countries. No, and I don't know. I don't really think I don't think most of those people are interested in anything I do besides Miscrits, to be honest. There might be one or two, but if they do order, you know, I mean, I do have a lot of followers that are from overseas, so I you know, I'd at least want to do something. So I'll probably do some kind of exclusive print that only those people get, and you know, of course, if you're in the United States, you might get bummed out that you can't get that print, but you're getting the better deal because you don't have to pay that exorbitant shipping costs. So,
you know, I just noticed in the chat, Ox said about media mail. Media mail is they can open it and sticker things as well. Look, it just jumped. Things as well, and just not worth the hassle, I found.
Oh.
And I'm just kind of wondering what he meant by that. They can open
because they have the right to verify.
Like the postal workers?
Yeah, yeah.
Because if you try to send like a curling iron through media mail, like I guess randomly they'll check to make sure you're not breaking the law.
And they stick a big old sticker on there, huh? That's interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah. Well, I knew they had the right to. I knew that they would sometimes do that, and if you do stick something in that doesn't belong, that's a heavy fine. So.
Because it's mail fraud.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, you don't want to do that.
No.
That's the lesson for today. Don't commit mail fraud.
Yeah, I wish the guy that stole my mail and stole my ID would have listened to that advice. But
well, you know, maybe hopefully they're watching Artcasters and now they'll know.
Yeah.
They'll go, oh, that was wrong. I didn't know.
Or if they're in jail. I don't know if they caught him. They identified the guy, but I don't know if they ever caught him. I guess I haven't followed up on that. I should, but.
Oh, you know, one other thing, getting back to Kickstarter, that I haven't heard other people mention, maybe I just missed it, but surprised me, was that almost immediately I started getting tons of messages through Kickstarter, like private messages.
Yeah.
At first I thought were from backers or potential backers.
Solicitors?
Most of it was spam. Most of it was like, hey, we could help you advertise your you know. And it's like, no. Especially, I was lucky that like I met my goal pretty early, so I'm like, I met my goal. Get out of, you know. But I think it's more for people that are, you know, need like $1 million to get their app off the ground or something, as opposed to smaller projects. But mixed in with that stuff that was easily ignorable, I did get some things that seemed real and may or may not have been with like, oh, I'm also running a Kickstarter, and I would look, and they were, but they were like, hey, support me too, or can you advertise for me? I see
like
you're
a
doing
sub
good.
for sub? Yeah, I don't get into that.
But here's the thing: is regardless what you think of that, it wasn't other artists, it wasn't other comics, it wasn't a kaiju movie. It was like, I'm opening a fashion store in Florida, or you know, somebody else like, oh, we have a new toilet product. I'm like, this is not even remotely related to what I'm doing, you know.
Right.
And one of them I did write back because they had not gotten much funding, and they're like, oh, we see you have so much and it's so lucky, and how did you do it? And it was like the toilet one or something, and I'm like, I was trying to be nice, and I'm like, oh, well, thanks, sorry you're not doing well, and I just, you know, through Instagram and here and there, and I post here and there, and I kind of told them what I did, and they're like, that's great, could you please donate to ours and also share ours with all of your followers? And I'm like, fuck you, like, really? Like, I thought you were reaching out as like a fellow Kickstarter, but you just want to use me. And that was most of it. But there was one that was a solicitor one where they wanted to pay to advertise. And I did, but it was a thing where, like, go here and we'll put your, you know, project on the front page of our group, and we'll put out a Twitter blast and whatever, and it's free for the first couple days. And I didn't have to give a credit card or any information because that's always sketchy if they're going to take it off file. But they were like, yeah, just put your email in and we'll put it up. And I did, and they did, and then that was it. I didn't pay, but I did get a little bit of free advertising from it. And, you know, I don't know for sure if I got a follower or not, but I did get followers that day that may or may not have come from that. Not follower, I'm sorry, contributor. So for the most part, it's garbage, but it's worth looking through because there might be a few in there that you could take advantage of, like a little bit of a free promotional thing, you know, without putting your credit card in. I would not give any financial information, but I didn't, and I got a little bit of free advertising. So that was, you know, but that was one out of like 50.
Oh, really? That much, huh? Yeah.
Oh, I was shocked. I still get some now. It's over, and they're like, "Hey, I see you're running." I was like, "Oh my god."
Yeah. I noticed, like, even when I back somebody and I share, because you know, I back a project and then I'll share it on Twitter. Then I get these. I get some Twitter handle follow me about Kickstarter promotion or something like that, just from backing other people or so.
A lot of times when I would post something on any social media and tag it Kickstarter or crowdsourcing or whatever, I'd often get something that would follow me. And usually it's innocuous, like, oh, we follow all Kickstarters or whatever. But again, I would sometimes get messages. There was one on Instagram where they liked it and followed, and they're like, hey, if you're interested in having us feature you and talk about it, just send us the info for your thing. That's what we do. And I was like, all right, well, if that's what you do. But then they're like, okay, cool. Now all you have to do is agree that, you know, when it's successful, you give us one free copy of the thing to give away to our followers. And also when our thing comes, you'll back us. Yeah. And the thing is, it was mostly for games, which they didn't say. They contacted me, and they're like, send us a copy of your game. And I'm like, you don't even realize it's not a game? Like, get out of here.
I'm not.
Yeah, that must be big business, because I got a lot of that stuff too, and you know, they all seem to have like some kind of, I don't want to say scam, but some sort of
predatory. I'll say predatory,
right?
Because it might be a legitimate service. They might not be ripping you off, but it's definitely like, oh, I smell new blood that I could, you know, exploit in some way.
I think at that point, like if you're that point, like, you know, when you're running your Kickstarter and you can't get it funded and you're in that desperation mode, and it's too late. It's like you got to build up that audience first. You know, that's like the key. And, you know,
and that
those
is,
kind of people aren't going to help you.
I don't want to mislead people, because I mean, there's all different tiers. Like, I kind of in the beginning compared what we're doing to, like, you know, Jake Parker or somebody like that, who's just in a whole other league, who's taken that time and knows kind of how to build that audience and everything. So that's a whole other level where, you know, but even us where we are, there's people that don't have any online presence at all. And I think if you're at that point, you're going to have a hard time. I mean, we're saying here we could probably do it. We're not going to aim for these lofty goals, but we can still probably make this thing happen. But you do need to. I mean, there was a Kickstarter podcast I listen to all the time, and it's not updating anymore, unfortunately. But basically, what he always says is that it's not if you're having problems funding, it's not that you have a funding problem, it's you have a crowd problem, because that's what it is. You have to have that crowd, or you have to have something. But even if it's maybe you don't have that big of an online crowd, but you have, like, as far as on YouTube or whatever, but maybe you just have a lot of friends and you can do it organically like that or whatever. But you have to have something. You have to have some sort of network, because people just aren't going to organically find it in enough, in the amount that's going to make it successful. So you have to have something.
You know what, Scott? I agree.
I agree too, but there is to every rule there's always that exception.
Well, something can go viral. So you can have an idea that it just hits. It's just so great that it could just totally go viral, and I've seen that happen before.
Right.
But I definitely
macaroni plate guy or whatever. And, so you never know. But I think in general, yeah, you're right. You need a crowd first.
Yeah. But I don't think it has to be a huge crowd necessarily, depending on what you're doing. We're talking comics where there are ways to do it inexpensively with print on demand and stuff like that. Now, if you're designing some new industrial design, like invention or something like that, that's a different story where there's a little more upfront cost.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So.
But I think, I can't speak for Jeff because he did the offset thing, but I think for Scott and I at least, and Jeff, you could tell me what you think, my attitude, and I'm sure it was like Scott's because he said this, is like, I'm going to do this regardless, and if I can get people on board to be part of the process and get some money up front, that's great. But it's going to happen. And Ox has said this too, like we're creating... It's going to happen. It's just a matter of if a lot of people come along for the ride early on and give us money early on to make it easier and more exciting, that's great. And this goes back to having everything kind of ready and having all your ducks in a row. I think that shows that when you're like, hey, here's this thing I'm doing, let's do it. And I think you're more likely to generate that excitement than the people who are like, hey, with your help, I'm going to start drawing this thing next month, and I think I'm going to hire someone to do lettering eventually. It's like, well, I don't know about that, But you have to be sincere about it, because like if my Kickstarter failed completely, the book is still coming out. Maybe I'll make 10 copies and that's it, but I'm gonna make it. So. Yeah,
and another thing is, and we've mentioned this a few times, that like both Gaz and I, their comics are basically done. Jeff, his artwork is all done. So that's really, I think that's really asking a lot, especially if it's like your first Kickstarter, because you have to have some kind of proof of concept that you're going to be able to deliver on this. And if you don't have anything out there, how do people really know that?
Yeah, I do see people do films that way though.
Yeah, film's different because again, a comic isn't that expensive to put together compared to a film. So But in the comic space, I think you should have something already, done.
Even if you're just a writer and you need to hire an artist, at least hire an artist to do 5 pages as proof of concept or something.
Yeah. I have seen comic guys do it too, mainly, like more famous type guys.
Yeah.
Right.
I can't remember his name. It's like his last name was Harris, and he used to do like the Starman covers.
Tony Harris.
I remember. Yeah, Tony Harris, and there was like a writer, and they put together a Kickstarter. This was a while back, and they were pretty much like, we're going to do this book if this thing, if you guys can pay us to do it.
Well,
that makes totally funded. But,
that makes sense because they have a proven track record of having done X amount of books, and they have fans already, and it's like, hey, I'm getting paid to do comics. I can't afford to take time off. Like, that's a whole different thing than someone trying to build up from nothing, I think.
Yeah. Well, what about like these guys who like fail at Kickstarter? Do you think they should try it again? So I have a friend.
Definitely.
I remember he had a Kickstarter for quite a bit of money. I think like 10 grand or something. Didn't get close. And then, he didn't try again. He didn't go for it again.
You definitely try again. Learn from your mistakes.
Yeah.
The Coolest Cooler, which was, I don't know if you guys are familiar with that.
No.
So it's a cooler, among other things. It had a blender built into it, and it's like it was one of the biggest like funded Kickstarter things ever. But he failed the first time he launched it, and he learned from his mistake. He went back, and I think he raised like, I don't know, $5 million or maybe more. I don't know, but yeah, that happens. The other thing that I would mention that I've heard, that if you're going through your campaign and you know that it's not going to fund,
Oh, cancel it.
Cancel it before, go, but you already have the people. Let the people know that backed you. I'm gonna, take all this information. I'm gonna rethink this whole thing, and I'll be back. And would you guys consider pledging again when I bring this back? Because the one thing is, if you fail to fund, that's up there on Kickstarter in perpetuity. It doesn't go down, so it'll show up as a failed project. But if you cancel it, like if you're going through the process and you're like you got a day to go and you're like this isn't going to happen or a few days to go, it might make sense to cancel that project. And again, take whoever backers you do have and let them know what the deal is, and then rethink everything, figure out what you did wrong, and then relaunch it later.
Yeah, I tell you though, I've heard that, and I really question it though,
Okay.
because especially the way Kickstarter goes, because you see so many of them that just barely cross the finish line at the last minute. You know what I mean?
Right.
Well, but
And-
if you're like 5,000 short of a 10,000 goal, you're not going to get that on the last day.
But then the other thing is, it's like, as far as it like staying up there forever and it's like a failed project, and I have one of those. I have like the black mark. You know what I mean?
And I don't think it's
came
that
back and
bad.
I did one that's that succeeded, and I don't know that it matters. You know what I mean? That thing's there forever.
I can say for good, bad, or indifferent, if mine was failing, I would let it fail. But that's sort of the mentality. When with everything,
I would write it out.
Yeah, I'd rather have an honest failure than a sort of fake. Oh, I decided to quit. Like, I think people know. Like, there was some projects that I was a backer of that suddenly, they've canceled. I'm like, well, clearly they were doing bad. It wasn't like they were doing great and decided to just quit.
Right, and I've also seen, and this is really weird, but I've seen with some friends where they ran a Kickstarter and they missed their goal by about half. I think they were going for about 5,000. They were about 2,000. Missed it. And then they started another one. They were like, okay, we can get 2,000. Let's start another one. We'll do 2,000. And then it missed. And I wonder if it was because, everybody didn't come back for the second time. Because, how people are on the internet. They're kind of like, maybe they're there, maybe they're not. You know what I mean?
Well, if they started immediately after a failure and didn't change anything but asking for less.
Next day.
No, I think that's a mistake because it's like, we failed. We're starting again, but give us less. It seems desperate. But if you come back a few months later and say, okay, we know we failed last time, but we figured out what we did wrong, and we've put some more work into the artwork, and we've changed our structure, and we now know we can do it and explain. I think communication is huge. Like in any relationship. And so if you just start over, I would be super suspicious. If you were like, we need 5,000 for this. We failed. Okay, 2. I'd be like, how are you doing for 2 all of a sudden? What happened? So.
Yeah, because I think a lot of the backers and things, sometimes it's just like the spur of the moment. Somebody decides, oh, this is cool, I'm going to back this. Whereas if a couple days go by, they might be in a different frame of mind and they might not back it then. So they probably go into it thinking, well, I already kind of backed this once, it didn't work. Why?
I'll be honest, I've done that exact thing with personal friends where they had projects that I'm like, that looks terrible, but they're my friend and I feel like I should do something, and I would kick in my 10 or my 20, whatever, and then it fails and I'm like, oh, good, and then they're like, hey, we're gonna start it up again, and I just kind of pretend I don't see the message, so you had your chance, buddy. Your crappy movie about a bar in New Jersey is not going anywhere.
Now, because
probably
also, the
too close.
What's that?
Move on.
Oh, yeah. Man. So the Dragon's Lair guys canceled their Kickstarter, and then they brought it over to Indiegogo.
Right.
And I think it was successful there. Well, yeah, because they don't have to raise the full amount. So.
Right.
But I think, so I mean, there are examples of people that have canceled their thing and kind of rejiggered it and relaunched it. So.
Yeah.
I'm gonna look at chat for the first time.
Yeah.
All right. Well, hello to everyone in chat. I'm terrible at multitasking, so. Hey guys, it looks like Ox, HC Brown, Cast Studios Inc., Chris McQuinlan. A lot of people I know, a few I don't. Kaze Black.
Okay, sure.
All right, I'm gonna scroll to the bottom because I'm like so far behind. People are like commenting on things we said 4 days ago. Okay, Mike Emirates is laughing at me. Guy from Portland do a comic. He wanted $1 pledge. I have no friend who. I'm terrible at this. I'm just half reading these.
No, that's what we do. It's the same exact thing we do.
Mike Emirates says, I have a friend who had no online presence, no previous work, no networking comics, no finished product, and he ran a successful Kickstarter that raised over $5,000.
Mike, you should have told us that, and we would have booted Gaz and got that guy on.
Yeah. I think more details are needed on that, because that sounds like an urban legend.
That it could have been one of those things that just went viral. Like, there was this...
Right, the potato salad thing.
And there's certain things, like there was this project. Now, this guy did have a following and everything, but he came up with this brilliant idea. He was a T-shirt designer, and he came up with this idea. It sounds kind of gross, but it hit a chord. But they're called period panties, and they're basically. Have you seen this campaign?
Nope.
So the guy's an awesome artist, but he does T-shirt design. So he came up with all these ideas for graphics to put on panties that girls would wear during their period. So
it's not about grammar then. And punctuation?
No, it is not. No. But this thing just went crazy because it was such. I mean, who would ever thought of this? This guy thought of it, and it just caught on because just the I don't it's just
right viral nature of it.
What's that?
Like the viral nature of it.
Yeah, it definitely had a viral nature to it. So there are. I mean, I could see if. There are things like that can just catch on. Like it would only take a few blogs, but there are certain projects like that. I know mine's not in that category, but there are certain things that could do that. But I think that's a huge risk going into expecting your thing to go viral. Because I think a lot of people do. Because you see people that have projects on Kickstarter, and just like, oh, I mean, you didn't even you didn't do any research or even think about this at all. It's like I'll just throw it out there and see what happens. It's like you kind of like get a clue because you need to put some thought into that, and that's why we're doing this. So
I do feel bad like when you go through like the comic section and you get down to the end and there's like a guy going for $5,000 and like he's got $5. It's like, oh man. You even have some like your mom's not even gonna give to this thing or something.
Mike Emirates is saying that the one he was describing I actually backed, which means it was probably a comic because that's mostly what I back. And I think I might know the one he means, but I guess the impression I had from it was that it had a bunch of pages of finished artwork that looked really nice and slick, and it had an interesting story. So I guess he tricked me into thinking he had done other work before. But it looked, I guess it can happen, but I don't know how he got 5,000, but I found that person that Mike is talking about through the search of comics, and it just looked like nice art, and there was enough to sell me on it.
Okay, so I mean that could be the case, I mean, I don't know. I mean I guess if you just have dynamite artwork, I mean people could just definitely just discover it like that too, but yeah, it seems like there would have to be something else. So this friend of yours, Mike, didn't have any prior social media footprint at all?
That sounds weird. Huh. And then plus he had a comic to do.
Yeah, I don't know.
I noticed HC said, do you think making a webcomic before a Kickstarter would hurt or would help?
No, not at all. And that was one of the reasons why in the beginning, I mean, I still kind of want to do it, but I haven't really given it much thought with everything else that's going around, but I was going to run my comic as a webcomic because to kind of
generate interest.
Following. Yeah, I think definitely. I mean, that's what a lot of people do, and you might think, I mean, some people might think, well, if it's up there for free, they're not going to purchase it, but that's not the case. I mean, there's so many instances where people run their webcomic, and they'll say it right in the video. You can read it online for free, and they'll still fund like crazy. So, I mean, people want to contribute. I mean, people, if they follow you, they're fans. I mean, they want to have that print copy, or they want the extras, or they want to just help you out.
And the smart ones know that it's free, but you can't do it forever for free if you don't make some kind of money on it. So they want to support you. And you do something like, oh, I'll throw in a signature, or I'll give you a print, or a little sketch, something they can't get. Then there you go. That's all it takes. My friend, this is like the third time I mentioned him, my friend Mike did a Kickstarter for his book, Rules for Dating My Daughter, which was a collection of a bunch of different comics that he had put online in various places. And I think there might have been one comic that he hadn't put online, but like 90% of it had been available for free, and it still did very well for that very reason.
Yeah, and there's people out there that are going to read your stuff for free, but they're probably the kind of people that wouldn't buy it regardless.
Yeah.
So
some people just don't buy your stuff. Period. They're totally your fans, but they'll never buy anything, and they won't buy it back at Kickstarter.
And I'm actually, that's not ideal, but I'm actually kind of okay with that. Not that I put my comic online, at least not yet, but like one of my rewards, I'm just giving out PDFs, as the digitals, which people could easily share or bootleg and pirate and whatever. But I definitely feel that if somebody likes my stuff and wants to support me and or my art, they'll give me money and they'll support me. And if they don't, but they still like what I did and share it and people see it without me getting revenue or money directly from it, it's still increasing my visibility in the world. And I want people to read my story. I want people to give a crap about my characters. And while ideally they'd pay for it, if somebody didn't have the money, like I think of it like this: if I was at my table and I described my book to someone and like, that sounds so awesome, I really wish I get it, and sincerely meant it, I might just give it to them. You know what I mean? Yeah. I couldn't do that all day, but so I kind of think the same thing about the online stuff, that if somebody would really enjoy your work but like physically can't pay for it, there's a certain amount of pro bono art I don't mind giving out.
No, actually I agree. I think it's part of the fan base that, makes your stuff big. I don't know. Yeah. Not to be all cocky, like I have a fan base or something.
Yeah, I struggle with the word fan too. I prefer to say like followers or supporters or
followers.
Yeah, I don't because I'm Jesus and I'm going to the desert. No, but like they follow me on social media. It sounds less. It's less of a commitment that like, oh, they followed me on Instagram. Sounds less weird than like they're my fan.
Yeah.
The other thing, and you guys can answer this since you both have run Kickstarters, and maybe Jeff, you said most of the people that you found that backed you already were familiar with your stuff, but for Gaz, so I think Kickstarter is also a way to sort of build an audience, because
I agree.
People, whether they back you or not, if they're searching through that. Like somebody could be searching through through the comics, and they could see, so they might see Horror A4 or Young and the Dead, and maybe they don't have the money, or maybe they're kind of gun shy about pulling that trigger and buying and purchase or backing it, but they might run into it in a show, and then it's like, oh, I've seen this before, because you're in front of a lot of people on Kickstarter.
Yes,
whether that translates to backing or not, people are seeing it.
I agree with that so hard, not just Kickstarter, but getting it visible. And again, I don't want people to misunderstand and think they should be doing work for exposure or working for free in any way, shape, or form. Do not work for free unless it's for yourself. The only time exposure is good is if it's your product that you own, your characters that you own, and then I'm all for it. I'm all for spending your own money to get stuff out there. I'm all for giving it away. I'm all for getting exposure for your own products that you own any way you can. And I've said something almost exactly what you said there, Scott, about, I think it was when I was giving out my postcards or something like that, where there's a weird name recognition, a brand recognition that resonates with people that makes it seem more legit. Oh, the Horror A4. Oh, there was a Kickstarter of that. Should make no difference whatsoever in whether or not they want it, whether or not they take me seriously, but whether consciously or subconsciously, having heard an artist's name or a product's name before makes it seem legit or real in some way that is stupid in humans, but ultimately true.
Yeah, and the other thing that's kind of good is that I've talked before about the importance of building like a mailing list, and a Kickstarter almost jumpstarts that mailing list, I think, because you've got people that are kind of there and they're expecting, and I think Brad Utterstrom was in the chat, and he just sent something out like to, I think, his Kickstarter backers and mentioned that he also had a mailing list, and I signed up for it. So, I mean, I think you've already kind of got a captive audience right there with your Kickstarters. They're already used to getting stuff from you, and you can kind of put that out there. If you're familiar, you might want to sign up for my mailing list or whatever. So, I mean,
yeah, yes.
So do we have anything? Because we've been going for a little longer than we usually do. We're about 2 hours now. So I don't know if there's anything we want to recap with, or anything else we want to mention.
Well, actually, you know what? just to keep it on Kickstarter, Mike was mentioning that same artist. He did commission a bunch of artists to do pinups, and this is something that I thought about for mine and ultimately decided not to. When I started getting more money in anyway, I know a couple artists, not like super well, but well enough that I could ask them to do pinups that have a bit of name recognition, more than me anyway. And one of whom is not super big, but he's known in like the monster books, kind of stuff, and I thought hard about getting like a variant cover or a pinup or something, and you know what stopped me was my ego, because I was like, I don't want to sell my product on someone else's name. And again, I want to be clear, I'm not slighting anyone who does this, I'm not judging anyone. You get your art out however it works for you. But for me, in my art ego, I'm like, if I sell this based on so-and-so's pinup, I'm forever gonna feel like they did it, not me. Right. And similarly with variant covers, and I wonder about this in like quote unquote real comics and big time comics. Like I'll buy a comic with like an Art Adams cover, and then it won't be his art inside, and I'm like and I immediately don't like the art inside, even if it's fine, because it isn't the art I thought I was getting. So having someone else's art on the cover of my book, I don't think is something I would ever do. Again, my own personal decision, not judging other people. Pinups are a little bit different because it's not the cover, and honestly, for my second book, maybe I will, but I wanted to prove I could do it on my own first. You know what I mean? So a lot of the hang-ups I had on this first Kickstarter, I probably won't feel as bad about for the second one. I don't know. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
Sure.
Totally. Now I was thinking of doing that maybe once I do get to the trade. I'd like to commission Kevin and Jeff and whoever else to do I think that's down the road.
For a trade, I think that would be great. Yeah.
I could see that though. I never liked that. I mean, I remember back in the days of like indie comics and trying to do comics. Thinking about like going the diamond and all that. That was like a big thing. We'll get a cover artist, get like somebody, like Sam Keith or somebody to do your cover, and then order it.
That was
and
the
it was
90s.
always like, it never left a good taste in my mouth. Even though I love like his work, it's just like, I want to succeed on my back. I don't want to,
Yeah.
I don't want to trick my way in or something. So.
Yeah, it's a fine line between getting like a fellow artist that's excited about your project to be a part of it, and trading on someone's name. Because if I had somebody I kind of know and is part of the 100s or whatever, like that doesn't feel so weird. But I'm struggling to not say these names, but there are a few people I know that are borderline famous whose name would carry some weight, and I could have gotten for next to nothing. And it's probably business stupid, of me, but ego smart.
But, sort of in that same vein, but a little different. And I just want to throw it out there for some people that may not have that audience quite built up yet. Mm-hmm. But one thing that really helps, that really does well in Kickstarter and comics is like anthologies, because you can partner up with a few friends, each contribute a story, and of course you're going to have to split that profit, so that's part of it. But you're all bringing your own social networks, and you can kind of build on that. So it's not just like one person's network; it's this extended network. So that's another way you might go. I mean, I don't, me personally, that's not my thing, because I just kind of like to kind of do my own thing as far as comics. But I mean, that's a way, something to consider.
I agree, though. That's a more organic way to like boost each other's. You're helping each other, and everybody's boosting their own reach. And that's not the same as like trying to trade on a more popular person's name. I think that again, I also not. I think I don't have the time to contribute to an anthology, considering how slow I am of an artist. But I think that is a great way to get things out there, certainly. I hope I don't come off as making too many rules. I just want to be super clear. Everything I've said is my own stupid rules in my own head, and I would never criticize anyone for doing anything.
Yeah.
15 rules to Kickstarter.
So I just read a comment from Punk Cat, who says he's in New Zealand, and he says he's stuck between a non-art buying area overseas because it would be great. Shipping ruins it. I guess basically they're saying that just the shipping is just too much. And I don't know if you were in the beginning of the conversation, but we were talking about one thing I want to do is I want to offer an additional print that's exclusively for people overseas. So even though you're paying that extra money, you're getting something for it, because it doesn't cost any more to put an extra print in the package. and it's almost like you're just buying that print.
I don't think it. I mean, like, I saw Chris McQuillan's in the chat, and I know he's going to run a Kickstarter. I think he's going to prove that wrong.
Is he?
Yeah.
Well, okay,
I think
this
if
is
people
gonna
want it, they'll pay it. You know.
this is gonna show my ignorance, but is Chris from Australia or New Zealand? I can't remember.
Australia. Chris is from Australia.
Okay.
One of those places.
Well, I was trying not to
Antarctica.
make it be the American thinking everything's the same, but I just could not remember.
I don't know if you've ever seen Fly the Conchords. It's so funny. Have you ever seen Fly the Conchords?
I have. Yes.
Because they're comparing each other's accent, and I can't do the accent, but they're saying, "Oh, it's like this," and that's what.
I really think it's important that you try to do the accent. I think that you should do that.
Yeah. Let's hear it.
Oh, jeez. Let me see. Yeah, it's like that. No, I can't do it. If I listen to it, I can do it.
Thank you for trying.
I thought the crocodile hunters in your
But
first
anyway,
second.
they're going back and forth about the different accent, and as an American, and I think they're trying to kind of make this point because
Right.
they were pretty much saying the exact same thing, even though I'm sure they can kind of tell the difference. But it's like, no, he's from New Zealand. He talks like this, and they're saying the exact same thing. Anyway, I love that show.
But I do think, though, that, you know, I mean, it's like I know the shipping's a lot, but I mean, I had people buy my stuff that were all over the place, and I had a couple from Australia, so I think that it's the same thing. I think that people, you know, pony up and get what they want, you know. I don't think it's out of the question if you're down there.
Pony up and saddle down. What does that mean? I don't know.
All right, you guys wanna wrap it up then?
Yeah, we should probably do it.
Any other last minute things you want to throw out there? Anything we missed? Hopefully we covered everything. I was going to make a big list of things to ask, and I know I'm going to forget some of it, so I might just have to email Gazbot when I get closer or something, and kind of. But
He needs to send over the rule book after he's done. Okay, Gaz.
yeah,
It's fun. I was gonna give you guys the rule book before we started, but I figured I'd wait till the end. I was planning on at some point doing a standalone video of like what I learned doing a Kickstarter and my suggestions and stuff. And after doing this, I kind of don't want to anymore.
Oh,
I feel like I did it. Here,
sorry to
listen
take
to
the
us.
content away from you. But,
No, I don't. It's more like you're giving me an excuse to be lazy. Like I still might, but I really feel like I could just put a link to this now.
Yeah.
You should, and actually,
hopefully
you weren't putting it off like rules. I mean, actually, everything you said was really good, and I appreciate, your advice and stuff. Definitely.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just still. My biggest concern is that am I going to be able to do all the stuff that needs to be done in the short amount of time that I have to do it with getting ready for the convention and everything. But a long time ago, like I was working on a children's show. I was buying a house. My first kid was being born, all in the same span, and I managed to get through that. So we'll see.
Yeah, I think it's probably like a lot of things where there's never going to be a perfect time to do it.
Right.
So
And I've already committed to. I've already mentioned it, so it's going to happen. I just gotta, So.
Yeah. You're probably gonna fund in the
I was
first
kind of
hour
hoping
anyway.
Gaz would say, "Yeah, I didn't do any prep. I just threw it up there and it did great."
No, sorry, I can't help you there.
All right. So, Gaz, where can they find you when you're not? And for any of you guys who don't follow Gaz, you should, because just to check out this toy collection. I mean, this guy's an awesome, massive toy collector. Always has cool stuff. He's out there rescuing cats and turtles, and and his vlogs are awesome, and does awesome comic book work. So.
I do. Thanks. I was gonna say I appreciate the compliment, but you're like everything but art. He's a terrible artist, but a fun guy. Check it out.
So let everyone know where they can find you online, Gaz.
Thank you, Scott. I am pretty much everywhere. I'm on Instagram. I'm everywhere as Gazbot, usually with one T, sometimes with two. The best place to find me is on YouTube, but you can find me pretty much anywhere: Facebook, Instagram, all that jazz, and I'm fairly responsive.
I'm going to usually save Jeff for last because he does the spiel about the newsletter and all that stuff. So I'm Scott with Serkworks. You're on my channel, so you know where to find me on YouTube. You can find me pretty much Serkworks anywhere on YouTube. Hopefully someday soon I'll be on Snapchat. I'm looking into it. But right now, Instagram, you can follow me on Instagram. That's where I probably post the most, but I post at other places too. So Serkworks pretty much anywhere. Jeff?
Yeah, and I'm Jeff Lafferty. My website's jefflafferty.net. And everybody should sign up for the newsletter, which the link is underneath the show in the show notes. And now I'm kind of forgetting, but it's the show rotates between all of our channels. So one week it's on my channel, 1 week it's on Scott's channel, 1 week it's on Kevin's channel. So it's like an easy way to keep up with it. And I don't spam you. I just send out I just send the newsletter out like a half hour before the show starts and says, "Hey, the show's starting, so come watch it live." So there you go.
Yeah. And we should mention Kevin just because he's not on, but he'll be back, and you can find him at kevincross.net and Kevin Cross on the internet.
Yeah, he's a punk rock dad skater guy that, whatever. I was going to try to do some kind of impression. I failed. Oh, here's my impression. Fuck Portland!
Oh, Lord.
Yeah. Now we get the explicit tag.
Comics are rad!
All right, everyone. We'll check you guys later. Thanks for watching.
Thanks for watching, everybody!
Bye.